go-ahead from Craig. Yes, you can if he wants to join back home. Okay. All right. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And you should have all received an addendum, which has some information items for the open part of the meeting and closed sessions, an addendum for personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, one requested by Councillor Fellner and one requested by myself, the mayor. So with those addendums, I'd also like to remind you that we have Nigel Belchamber listening in on today's meeting. He will be providing written comments on protocol. He's been giving me coaching information. So just to remind you, he is listening in. And I would request, with council permission, that he be allowed to listen to our closed session. He will have no input except to comment afterwards on how we handled some of the issues. I also want to remind you that sitting in the Chief Administrative Officer's chair is Director Peter Kopich, and he will be acting as the acting CAO, and I would like to have him, if possible, attend the closed meeting with the clerk. Do I have council's agreement to those changes or addendums and attendance? All in favor of Nigel listening in and Director Kopich being in? 1, 2. Are you? I'm sorry. Can everybody hold their hands up? Craig has to see them. 2, and myself. That's 3. Is that carried?
Nope.
You're a no? Okay. Daryl's a no. Ted, you're a no? I'm going to remind you on some protocol. If you speak, you must unmute yourself. In order to be heard, you need to put up the little blue hand. So we still don't have attendance from Rod. So then in close, do we have agreement to the addendum issues? All in favor of that? Daryl, if you've got your hand up, I can't see it. You're okay. Terry, are you in agreement with the addendum? You need to unmute yourself if you're going to speak.
You lost me here again.
I'm asking
Am
for
I agreement to put the addendum into closed? Is that what you're asking me?
There's addendum items in both open and closed, and I'm asking for approval of the addendum, which you received by email after 3 o'clock. And I also was asking permission for Nigel, our consultant, to observe in closed, and Director Kopich to act as acting CAO in closed.
Right. Okay. I don't have any problem bringing them into the addendums, approving the addendums. I'm opposed to having them heard on my matter and closed.
Okay. Are you in
If you want to
agreement
split
to
them up, we
having?
can do it that way.
Are you in agreement to having them in the 2 other items in closed?
Isn't there only one item enclosed? The municipal.
No, you have one item enclosed, which was the renewal of Harold's contract, and you have 2 addendum items, one from Councillor Fellner and one from myself.
But the second item is item B, personal matters. So is that not just 2, A and B?
No, I will be bringing forward another issue.
So it's not on the agenda.
No, it's an addendum item.
It's not in the addendum.
It's listed as, the one issue comes from Terry Fellner and one issue comes from me, as it says on the cover of the addendum package.
There is nothing in the addendum package related to what you put on, Mayor. Can you
No, there
confirm?
isn't, because it's verbal. So I'm gonna,
We've already completed a vote. It was a tie, therefore it was deferred. I believe everyone is in agreement with respect to the addition to the addendum. Full stop.
is that correct, Councillor Fellner?
I'm agreeable to the addition of the addendum. I'm somewhat a little bit confused as to why your matter wouldn't be disclosed prior, but however,
Okay,
I'm agreeable to
all right,
that.
so we'll accept the addendum, but we do not have our acting CAO or the consultant in the closed meeting. So may I have an approval of the agenda with the addendum? All in favor? Councillor Collins, are you voting?
That's right, there's my finger.
And Councillor Fellner?
I had my hand up.
Okay, you have to hold them up until our clerk can see them. Thank you.
So,
Mayor, we do not know when the clerk can see them, so he needs to either communicate that to us or someone needs to give us a head nod.
Okay, just hold your hand up until we say thank you. Okay, how about that? Just to remind you, we're live, and I will ask you for all future meetings to make sure you're fully signed in a full 15 minutes before the call of the meeting. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? I hear nothing. There is none. We move on. I will ask for, I'm going to do as I did in previous meetings and ask for individual wards to move and second each issue. This motion is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held May 4th, 2020 as circulated. Can I have a motion by Ward 1? And a seconder by Ward 2? Thanks, Daryl.
So move, yeah. I second.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I so moved. Mute wouldn't come off. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to have a vote on this. All in favor of the minutes? Thank you. Carried. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the accounts in the amount of $464,141.06. Can I have a motion by Ward 3? Ward 3?
he's not here.
Motion by Ward 4.
Yeah,
Carrie, thank you.
yes,
And seconded by Ward 5.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving into item 6, shore and concession road allowance applications. Council will now consider the following shore road allowance applications. Shore road allowance for Perry Harbor Road Association, Boyne River, bylaw number 2020-025. Secondly, shore road allowance application number RAS-2019-0009-F for Franchetto on Otter Lake, bylaw number 2020-040. Shore road allowance application number RAS-2018-0010-F for Wilson, also on Otter Lake, bylaw number 2020-042. Have there been any written objections received related to any of these applications?
No written objections have been received.
Thank you. So I will read the first one and then ask for motions and movers and seconders. That bylaw number 2020-025, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and sell part of the original shore road allowance, the Boyne River, in front of Lot 30, Concession 10, Geographic Township of Foley, now in the Township of Seguin, District of Parry Sound, designated as Parts 1, 2, and 3 on Plan 42R-21197, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion by Ward 6?
I so move.
I have a
Seconded.
question, Mayor.
You can have a question about this after it's on the floor and moved and seconded.
Thank you.
Could I have a seconder from Ward 1?
I second it.
Okay, questions from the councillor. I'm going to ask Director Stone or yourself.
We both have.
Okay, Director Stone and Director Coppich could both respond. So Councillor Collins, your question?
Yes, this is to the Perry Harbor Road Association. This seems to be, to me, very vague. First of all, I don't know who they are or who they represent. I've never heard of them after 6 years as a councillor, or who they represent. I tried to get them on the web, and there's nothing on the web pertaining to this organization. So I'm going to need more information on specifically what they want, how much they want, and why they want it. So I would like to see a report back to council. This is very vague as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, could I ask Director Coppich to reply?
Hello, Ted.
Sure.
This process has been going on for probably 4 or 5 years now. What happened is this is beside the Rose Point Trail, and there was two old boilers that were used as culverts that washed out in a storm years ago. And what this is just a road allowance to allow people who are on the other side of the river to access their properties again. So the reality is all they want to do is reinstall 2 culverts and access their property. And in order to do that, the township is releasing these lands for them to access that and perform the work to install the culverts.
And it is my understanding they pay all construction costs.
But they pay all instruction costs. We're just allowing, the township is paying for the legal in order for the transfer of the land to allow
Rod Osborne.
Joined the meeting.
to build construction. It's already has an M&R approval. It's got a works permit that's set up for starting in July. It's been ongoing for a long time. And this is sort of the final step. The Parry Sound Road Association is what they call themselves. It's an association of 4 to 5 different landowners on the other side of the river, Ted.
Okay, I'm familiar with that, Peter. It's been quite some time when their bridge washed out. I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's
how long it's taken.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm all right with it. If Councillor Cole is all right with it, I'm fine with it. It's in his ward, isn't it?
Yes.
Are there any other questions for Director Coppich?
Yes.
Yes. There's a couple here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I see Councillor Moffat. You've got your little blue hand up.
Peter, I'm looking on page 36 of the council package. I'll give you a second if you could pull that up.
Yes, I have it.
Okay, when you say the other side of the river,
Part 1 is the other side of the river.
it says okay, so Boyne River is sort of that little kind of U that comes underneath of part 2, between part 2 and
Part 3 is a little portion of the road allowance of the Rose Point Trail, and the other portion is shore road allowance, which was the best estimate of the surveyors. And part 1 is the shore road allowance on the other side of the river.
So when you say they're accessing their place, are they coming from, if I'm looking at this from the top where the sign is road, or am I looking at it that they're driving along Clarington colonialization to get to their place?
It's not the Clarington colonization. It's an access for ATVs only. It's not for heavy equipment other than a special allowance to allow them to put their culverts in using the Rose Point Trail. But that's an access point for them only. It's not for a road.
So how are they, sorry, Peter, they're accessing their place only by ATV, so they're parking at the top of the trailhead and then coming down?
That's how they would access it. They would have to, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Their to their property is only by ATV or walking.
So as of right now, they can't make that. If I'm coming down,
They would be accessing from Glen Burnie end.
right, and they'll come down the Rose Point Trail and hang a right over where the culvert needs to get fixed, and then along the Clarington colonialization road.
That's on the south side, yeah. So if they're heading toward Glen Burnie on Rose Point, they would make a left over that, where the two culverts would be.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn that over to the next person.
Councillor Cole?
Yes, got just a question, because the agenda mentions Perry Harbor Road Association, but the document itself, the report, doesn't mention any name. Is the Perry Sound Road Association a legal entity? Who are we dealing with here?
They were created as an association. They're a legal entity that represents the ratepayers on that side of the other side of the river, and our lawyer has been working with that lawyer representing them. So it is a legal entity.
So the final transfer will have a legal body name.
Yes. It's all documented and it's all legal.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Fellner?
Yes, Peter, who owns the Carrington colonization right away beyond Part 1?
That is an old trail. That's
right.
That's what they use for an access. It's been there for a long time. That's been the access point, and it goes back a fair distance, and it fronts to their properties.
Right, but who owns that? Who owns that easement?
The township owns it. The township owns that colonization section.
Okay. So we own the easement, right?
We own the road. We own the colonization road easement. Yes.
Right.
We're allowing them.
Now we're gonna convey to them, or we're asking to convey to them Part 1, which is on one side of the river, Part 2 and Part 3. And then that abuts into the Rose Point Trail, right?
Correct.
So that, if we are agreeable to that, that would get, the deeds to those 3 parts would be conveyed to this Perry, whatever it is, right?
That's correct.
They would have sole control over whoever crosses those 3 parts, right? And then the
township
Carrington
retains
colonization
an access.
beyond that, which is municipally owned, would have there'd be no legal access to the public.
The township still has an access over that. That's part of the agreement.
So
Okay.
the part of the agreement is we're selling them these 3 parts, but then the municipality still maintaining access, the right of access,
Yeah.
registered on title on it.
It's a
Isn't
transfer.
that kind of a convoluted way to get them what they need to put the culvert in? Like, why couldn't we just do that?
This was a 4-year process. It was hard enough to get all of them together. It's finally, this is the final stage. It's gone through all the legal reviews from our lawyer and from their lawyer. So this is sort of the final straw.
Yeah, I understand, but I just don't want to make a decision where there's an adverse reaction down the road that wasn't considered. Right? So if you feel we're covered off here.
I can't see there's no negative to it. We're just trying to allow them access to the property that they haven't been able to access for 4 years.
Okay.
Okay, and I believe previous council discussed this at length as well, that took us to this point on the documentation. So I'll call for a vote. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, Daryl, your hand, do you have a hand up? Yep, okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much for holding your hands up. Some of your hands are off screen.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yep.
Councillor,
Osborne?
yes?
Okay, I'm trying to join right now with video. Just give me a sec. We had a glitch.
Okay, well, you can continue to be part of the telephone call. Do you have a vote on this resolution?
It's already done, I thought.
Well, it did carry, but did you have,
No,
okay, thank you.
I'm waiting for the host to let me in.
Okay, we are moving. Okay, so the next two, just hang on here. Okay, I have a motion that bylaw number 2020-40 being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell a portion of the original shore road allowance application RAS-2019-0009-F for Francesco is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion from Ward 3? Thank you.
So moved.
And seconded by Ward 4. Councillor Felder, Ward 4, can I have a seconder for this? Thank you. Okay, are there any questions? All in favor? Okay, it's carried. Thank you. So the next is the deeming part of this. Could I have
Madam
a motion?
Mayor, maybe you could just remind Councillor Osborne, since he just joined, about his hand up and tell the thank you. I don't know that he had the full benefit of that.
Okay, Councillor Osborne, just a couple reminders from the beginning of the meeting. If you wish to speak, you use the little blue hand to put it up from the participant screen. And when we vote, if you wouldn't mind keeping your hand up until I say thank you or count the votes. The clerk and I have to keep those in mind as we go ahead.
I'm aware of both of those items, Mayor.
Great, thank you. So I have a motion that bylaw number 2020-041, being a bylaw to deem part lot 1 of Plan 298, pursuant to section 50(4) of the Planning Act, not to be on a plan of subdivision, property owners Raymond and Arlene Franchetto, property roll number 4903-030-006-02600, file number D 2019-0005-F, is hereby deemed to have been read at first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion from Ward 5?
I move that motion.
Thank you. Seconded by Ward 6.
I second that motion.
And all in favor? Okay, thank you very much. That's carried. third one, that bylaw number 2020-042, being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell a portion of the original shore road allowance, application number RAS-2018-0010-F for Wilson, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion from Ward 1? Daryl? Okay,
I so move.
thank you. Seconded by Ward 2.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Councillor Fellner, do you have a vote? Okay, thank you very much. That's carried. And then we have the deeming part of that bylaw number 2020-043, being a bylaw to deem Part Block A of Part M220 pursuant to Section 50(4) of the Planning Act, not to be on a plan of subdivision. Property owners Timothy and Suzanne Wilson, property roll number 4903-003-005-00200, file number D 2019-0006-F, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Ward 3?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Ward 4. Councillor Fellner, can you second this? I think you're on mute, but, okay, thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And this is being the last one. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby direct staff to proceed with option 1 of staff report number DPS-PL-2020-042, concession road allowance application number RAC-2020-0002-F, bracket 1484683 Ontario Inc., and commence the process for consideration of the application. Can I have a motion from Ward 5?
I so move.
And a seconder from Ward 6?
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
I have a question.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry. Okay, I didn't see the little blue hand. Councillor Moffat.
I guess this may be directed towards Director Stone. I presume he's somewhere in the building.
Yes, he can hear, the staff can hear. Yep.
Okay. Do we know what they're going to use this property for? Steve?
Director Stone, are you in
Yep.
hearing distance?
Yeah, they're going to apply for rezoning. They're going to consolidate all their lands and they're going to have a private recycling facility project come forward. They've pre-consulted with staff for that facility and they're working on the documents to submit.
What kind of recycling facility are we talking about? Burning? What exactly would be a recycling facility?
They have an existing facility in Perry Sound, and they're just carrying on with that. So in essence, it's a collection facility where they package up the recycling materials and ship them out.
So all recycling materials, or glass, or plastics, or what?
It'll be normal blue box type stuff. There might be construction waste as well that they'll package up and send south.
Okay, and do we know is this like this stuff is not sitting there leaching into the ground?
No, we've asked them. Yeah, we've asked them to come up with studies that deal with drainage, and that's part of the stuff that they're working on. They'll have as part of their submission, there should be a functional servicing report that deals with how they're going to control rainwater, for example, on the site.
Timeline then? Director Stone? Is this 2020 or is this
Well, I suspect that their applications will be filed later this summer. And I would think the approvals would be, if they have all the materials and we can get comments back from MTO, for example, and from Hydro. Hydro is the big one. I would suspect that we're not looking for approvals this year. It would be some time.
and MOECC, Ministry of the Environment, MOECP and Parks, do they not have to opine on it?
Yeah, they'll be circulated. Whether they have any requirements remains to be seen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other little hands. Oh, Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, Steve, I'm looking at the map, page 2 of 4. So it's got additional lands owned by the applicant. So they own the purple lands. They want to buy the concession road allowance. And then it's the subject lands with the hatch marks and Seguin written through it. So what is, they want to purchase that as well?
No, the subject lands they have 3 land holdings in there. And so what they're hoping to do is assemble all the parcels together. They also have an interest in the MTO lands as well. And so depending on what they get with regards to the total land, then they'll assemble and put the buildings towards the north end of that is north, right? So sort of the north end of the property. So where the subject lands are.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Fellner?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Councillor Osborne, please use your little blue hand, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
where was, I thought it was up on the top right, a little blue hand. Can't find it.
It's
On
under
a computer?
On a computer, yeah.
Then go to the participant button and click
Yep.
on that.
Oh, you gotta
And you
click
can
it.
move that button around.
Yeah, right
Okay,
there.
go ahead with your question.
So this is Adams Brothers, the applicant.
Yes.
Has there been consultation between Public Works, Seguin, and Perry Sound on this venture? And are there any ramifications to either municipality, them entering the recycling business?
Yeah, Public Works, our Public Works have been involved in the consultation. Yes, Perry Sound, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, having no further questions, can I call a vote on this? All in favor, please? Okay, thank you. That's carried. And we move into staff report. The Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for the May 19th, 2020 meeting of Council. You can all see that list. Can I have a motion by Ward 6?
I so move.
And a seconder from Ward 1?
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, we're just receiving staff reports.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Okay, all in favor of receiving staff reports? Councillor Fellner, do you have a vote? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, so we go to the first one. That as per recommendation of staff report number PWRD 2020-005, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby accept the bid from Dali Dust Control for the supply, delivery, and application of up to 263,000 liters of 35% liquid calcium chloride at 28 cents per liter plus applicable taxes on Township of Seguin roads, and Council does hereby award contract number 2020 2022-012, the daily dust control subject to the total cost of the works not to exceed $75,000. Could I have a motion from Ward 3?
So moved.
Thank you.
Also-
Seconded by Ward 4.
Second,
Then there's a question, first of all, from Councillor Moffat. And this will be directed at Director Coppage.
Peter,
Yeah.
I recognize we're buying a certain amount of liters. I remember last year we either ran out of budget or ran out of calcium with respect to some of the summer maintained roads, and I'm wondering if that is budgeted for in this to cover off the summer maintained roads as well on that.
We have made, we are adjusting the volumes to cover off some of the seasonal roads this year. Yes.
And the timing for this will occur when, Peter?
We actually put 1 or 2 down already, and the balance will be after, starting next week.
So now. And that's it? Then there's no more after this? There's no second application or anything?
It's one application, and what we're doing this year is we're grading the roads in advance, and then we're putting a packer on the road afterwards to stabilize and make a hard surface. It's worked out quite well.
Thank you, Peter.
Councillor Osborne.
You already answered part of my question, Peter. When would you give the completion date? When do you think all application will be finished by?
By the end of May.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions? No questions? All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Thank you. And the next item, I'll ask Director Coppage to speak to it. It's for information and an update on summer maintenance roads. Peter? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but.
These are the the seasonal roads that we've decided, figured on working on this year in various states. It's not, but these are the roads that we're going to be working on, and a description of what we're going to be doing in these roads. We've done some of the work already, some of the brushing, and the rest of the ditching and the gravel and the other work is yet to be done.
Councillor Coles, you have a question?
Yeah, Peter, which of these roads do you anticipate we will be providing year-round maintenance on now, like including snow plowing, if any?
Linberry Drive will be year-round road as of this year, once we finish the turnaround and we complete the work done on Sunny Shore Estates. And we are going to be working on as well Morgan Bay Road, and toward the goal of completing it for year-round. But it depends on how much work we have to do on the road. But we are working toward that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Peter, when the committee last met, we discussed Tucker Road, 12th Concession, and Spring Lane. Where are those in this process now, in terms of whether they are year-round roads, or what's happening with those three?
Well, Spring Lane is done. We're going to be servicing that this year. And these are the other, with Tucker Lake Road, that's a gravel application. We felt based on safety and number of people on the roads that these would be more suitable at this time.
So Tucker Lane and 12th Concession are sort of just regular maintenance, or I'm a little,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean. Because I
These are
didn't
the
say,
ones- These are the ones that will have a higher impact on the roads, on the seasonal residents on those roads.
so one of the things that we established in our committee was safety.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering how that lens has been used on the summer maintained roads in getting to where we are today.
Linbury Drive requires a turnaround at the end of it. There's also some ditching and gravel as well, and brushing. All of the work that we're doing will improve sightline and will improve road condition, which are all elements of safety. Summit Drive is a steep hill and it washes out, and we need to do some ditching there so that it's somewhat passable in wet seasons. So all of these are related to safety.
When I was looking at our report that you had done last year by the outside consultant Tatum, right?
Yeah.
I was looking at Bridgewater Road, and it looked like some of this was private. And
No, Bridgewater Road, that's an incorrect drawing in the report. Bridgewater
okay.
Road is basically a road allowance that goes straight down to, I believe it's Turtle Lake, and we still, we have yet to complete putting gravel at a turnaround at the boat launch. So the only part of Bridgewater Road, the seasonal road that we're looking to work on, is just right along the concession road allowance. Bridgewater Road breaks off and makes a turnaround into a private subdivision. That's not part of this. It's just along the concession road allowance to the boat launch.
Okay, I'm not sure where the boat launch is. Maybe it's at
Right at the end of the shore road, right along the concession road allowance, right at the lake. That's where the boat launch is.
Okay.
Access.
Okay. With regards to going forward, when are we going to see another report a year from now, or are we going to see something maybe later this year in terms of as part of the budgeting process, Peter, on this matter?
When we had the meetings in the committee, we discussed that we would be given $100,000 and we would do the most with that money that we could toward the end of improving seasonal roads. And that's exactly what we're doing in this document here and what our plans are. You know, the specific roads, we can have a discussion at another time, but really we're following what the goal and what the outcome of our committee was.
And I would say, if you want to make it part of the budget discussion for 2021, that's a whole nother discussion and an opening for future.
So my question was, when would we expect to see something as an update with regards to this, as part of the budget for 2021 or sometime before?
Are you asking for a summary of what was done this year? Is that what you're asking? At the end of the year?
I'm asking you, Peter, you're in charge of this. I'm asking you when would we anticipate seeing something more on summer maintenance roads? It may be you've offered it, so maybe it is an update as to where things have gotten, and this is what we're planning on doing in the future, i.e. 2021. I'm just trying to get a gauge of an understanding as to when we would expect to see something more on summer maintained roads. A staff report or something. It's your call. I'm just trying to understand timing.
Probably the amount of money isn't good. It's the same amount of money. We'll probably do the same thing like this next year. Or if you want an update on this later this year, we can do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. I wasn't sure if we would hear back on this a year from now or sometime, before. Thank
No,
you.
it's sort of, this is what our plan is, and we'll
Yep.
see how we execute it, and then we'll do the same thing next year.
And
Okay.
if council chooses to put more money into roads, then other roads will be addressed. But that's at budget time, kind of August, September.
Yep.
Councilor
Okay.
Fellner.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Peter. Just a question on the 3 roads that you're brushing this year, is you sort of your intention to brush them, and then perhaps next year, if the program continues, you'll do some ditching and like a sort of a step improvement of these, or what's sort of your strategy now that you've had a little bit more time to, figure things out since the last meeting we had?
Some of the seasonal roads haven't been brushed, so that's why we had a very effective crew this year. So we took advantage of their productivity, and we took on some of the seasonal roads. And really, when you do the brushing, it also gives some room into the road bed and allows the sun to get in there. It'll probably help it out. In the longer term, the goal is to do ditching on the seasonal roads, and all the seasonal roads require ditching and some road improvements over the longer term. So it's just a step along the way.
So, and my second, and it's just a comment, Peter, and it pertains more to Darrell's line of questioning, and I think it would be helpful prior to our budget talks for next year, for you to provide sort of a synopsis of what you were able to achieve with the budget you were given this year, so that we can assess, how effective, what was that amount of money? Did it make a difference? Do we need to perhaps look at increasing it?
Sure, that's fair.
I think that's sort of
here.
Yeah, it's sort of like the first step, right? This is the inaugural year, so some good feedback, I think, will help us all make a better decision for next year. That's my only comment.
We'll revisit this in the fall.
Councilor Coles.
I just wanted to add just a comment that I'm pleased that Peter's able to accomplish what he said he would in the beginning when we ended our committee meetings, and to see it going forward. My objective to, wherever possible, to find future funding to facilitate taking this further, more rapidly rather than slower. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, so we'll receive the report and maybe bring an update before we have to start allocating dollars to roads. So we have a motion now on paving, that as per the recommendation of staff report PW-RD 2020-007, and as per section 5.1.3 of bylaw number 2011-057, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby waive the requirements of bylaw number 2011-057, being a bylaw governing procurement policies and procedures for this contract, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby award the contract to pave various sections of roads in the Township of Seguin to Fowler Construction, subject to the total cost of the works not to exceed $748,000 plus taxes. And could I have a motion from Ward 2?
So move.
And a seconded from Ward 3?
So move.
Okay, I think it's very comprehensive in the agenda package of why they're doing this. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Peter, this mentions Fowler and paving and the fact that they're paving sections of 400 Highway. These roads that you're referring to here, James Bay, Turtle Lake, and Horseshoe, are we looking at hot pavement?
Yes.
Oh, so we're not doing any high float on Turtle Lake Road? We're going to hot pave the entire road?
No, there is an agreement made with Hall's Construction that we will be paving from the Hall's Pit entrance to the 141.
That section.
That section only, the balance will be surface treatment. And then James
Okay.
Bay Junction Road was surface treatment, but it was falling apart, and we put in the budget to pulverize it and to pave it this year.
Okay, and is that, and then the other one was Horseshoe Lake, which is a mess as well, Horseshoe Lake Road?
Well, there was some
That's
work, some problems with the application of the asphalt last year because it was applied cold. And so they're going to be coming back, and we're going to be improving Horseshoe Lake Road.
Okay, last question. Are those two roads, Horseshoe Lake Road and James Bay Junction, are those road beds going to be up to snuff in order to contain and maintain hot pavement without further frost heaves? Like, I mean, is there any extensive work needs to be on those road beds before Fowler applies hot pavement, which is expensive?
James Bay Junction Road, all of the subgrade was, all the frost heaves were dug out. We put gravel on the road. We've leveled it out. It's shaped up, and it's ready for pavement whenever Fowler has an opportunity to get at it. And Horseshoe Lake Road, for the most part, we won't be able to get at all of Horseshoe Lake, but we will improve some of the bad sections of Horseshoe Lake Road. Most of what's happened in those areas is the failure of the surface treatment and not so much the road bed. It's just the heavy traffic that goes along there. And by paving over it, it's adequate to improve the road surface.
Okay, so how much of Horseshoe Lake Road will be done? Like what? From where?
Approximately half of it. Approximately
So
half
coming
of it.
coming up from Lake Joseph Road towards the north.
Yes, there'll be this straightaway section and around the bend, and then there'll be some patches that are put along on the way up to the Tim Hortons. And we're also going to put a bigger sign there, and bigger sign put up there to prevent heavy trucks from using that road.
Thanks, Peter.
Councillor Mossick.
I just want to go back to the question that Councillor Osborne asked, Peter, in your comment. I understand that the work, as you stated, was subpar last year. So there was some warranty work that was going to be done by Fowler. So this 62 is, sort of stretching out the balance of this to get it to about a half, the bends and the straight and some of the pothole issues.
Yes, and they're going to fix up some of the areas that they didn't do a good job on at no cost.
So so they've quoted, I guess, on a particular section at 62, and then, I'm just wondering how you're managing the warranty work if they're sort of spreading it out at the same time.
That's what we're working with them when they get on the road. We will be working that out with them. The amount of road that they're going to be fixing under warranty and the amount of work that we're going to be paying for.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Peter, so are you going to, what type of legal document are you going to use to govern the works here? You're going to use like the OPSS Muni contract, or how are we,
For the paving?
Yeah, for work of this, this dollar value. What protection? How do you get us protected?
We'll use the standard paving document. The OPS we haven't signed a contract with them yet. This is just to allow us to do so.
Okay. So that you're going to enter into a contract with Fowler
Yes.
for the prices indicated.
Yes.
Right? And they're gonna furnish the usual guarantees.
And we're gonna put some conditions and some standards into that.
Right, and then what about surety on the performance of the work, like your performance and maintenance bond, labor and material bond? The usual for municipal projects over $100,000.
They didn't quote us with a bond price. So these were just prices of doing the job without a bond.
And I think this is an opportunity for us to let the Director of Public Works to manage things within his wheelhouse, and to make sure, I am very confident that he will work with Fowler to get the best value and warranties as he has in the past.
Terry, I'll just say that we're also
I'm not
working.
suggesting one way or another. I simply asking the question.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't, you know, I'm happy
We
to
will-
hear your opinion, but
We will put some clauses into the contract. It hasn't been written yet. I'm just getting approval to enter into something. The other thing about this is that there's an opportunity, since they're paving the highway, that they can actually pave on our roads when they can't pave on an MTO shave and pave. So there's an opportunity for us to get a better price based upon a backup job. We're trying to take advantage of that.
Thank you. Councillor Collins, I see you have your hand up, and that's fine, you can speak, but please try and use the little blue hand, because that's where I look for who would like to speak, but go ahead now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mayor, with all due respect, Peter, I've known you for a long time, and you're asking us to make a big decision here, especially a single sourcing to one company for over $750,000, or $750,000. And it will be a one-time. This is not going to, we're going to waive the bylaw, but it is just this one time.
That's why we
How
asked for
long I
this.
would expect to see RFPs, because we are dealing with public funds. And this is a lot of money. And I understand where you're coming from, Peter. But like I say, single sourcing for this kind of amount of money is, it doesn't happen too often, my friend. It doesn't happen too often.
No, there's
So I
an
have to say-
opportunity because there is asphalt going right through Seguin Township on a regular basis. That's why nobody has to mobilize yet. The asphalt is already there.
I understand, Peter.
It's clear that we're only waiving this on this one opportunity now, and it's clearly explained in the staff report, so it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to waive the competitive.
RFPs.
RFP.
Councillor Osborne?
So, thank you, Mayor. Peter, I take it you're confident that if we had gone out to bid for this, that other suppliers would have come in at a higher price due to the fact that they're not mobilized as Fowler is, and that in your estimation that we wouldn't see a better price had we gone out for others?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there is quite a bit of cost for somebody to come in and mobilize from scratch.
We have to have an asphalt plant brought into the area, so.
Okay, I rest your case. Thank you.
All in favor? Councillor Fellner, you're not voting?
No, I'm not in favor.
Hang on, can you keep your hands up, please?
You got 5.
5, yeah, okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we have to wait for the clerk to see everything, so,
Well,
okay.
where is the clerk? Is the clerk beside you, Mayor?
He's physically distanced in the same room as I am,
Oh, okay.
and so is acting CAO Director Costich. I have a motion here that as per recommendation of staff report number PW-RD 2020-008, and as per section 5.1.3 of bylaw number 2011-057, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby waive requirements of bylaw number 2011-057, being a bylaw governing procurement policies and procedures for this contract, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby award the contract to restore the damage caused by the construction of the Garden Court switching station for the Hendley Inlet Wind LP project to Fowler Construction, subject to the total cost of the works not to exceed $76,451.50 plus taxes. Could I have a motion from Ward 4?
Move.
Okay, and seconded from Ward 5?
I second it.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this one?
Not really.
Yeah, Councillor Moffat, sorry.
I think Councillor Osborne was ahead of me, so I'll let him speak first.
Okay, Councillor Osborne, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I take it that we're going to waive the procurement policy on this one again for the same reason, Peter?
Yes.
And this $76,000 in damages, who was that estimated by, or who came up with that number?
We negotiated that with Pattern
Henry?
Energy and PowerTel, myself, and PowerTel. And actually, it was a pretty rigorous discussion, and we weren't satisfied with the amount that PowerTel was willing to do, so we went directly to Pattern Energy, and we had discussions with them, at which time they agreed to a higher amount than we would have got with PowerTel. And now that we have this money, we will be doing work on Rankin Lake Road, Garden Court, and portions of Cochrane Lake Road.
And it will be a sufficient amount then for Fowler to do the work?
There is sufficient monies in that to do the work, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Peter, obviously you and I have chatted a number of times on this item.
Yeah, took a while to get it, Daryl.
Obviously important issue from the residents, timing. Any sense as to, over the summer, before Labor Day, any sense on that? And I recognize that it's a bit of a moving target, but I'm just trying to.
It's a moving target. The answer is before the highway is finished paving.
And when is that?
That's this year. So our hope is that sometime in the summer or in the fall, but really it's just a crew moving in and doing the paving.
Okay.
It's just when an opportunity presents itself.
Okay. Obviously, Garden Court is a little bit easier to do. There's not as much traffic. But Rankin Lake Road being a more heavily trafficked area, what kind of timeline, when you know more, would we be able to get it out to residents in terms of, fixing that crossing where the snowmobile trail is? And I'm not sure what other areas that would be part of this.
Once it's possible that it might be a very quick move over to from the highway paving. We give as much notice as we can possibly get. So that's what I'm going to offer you.
Okay. Could you just send me an email?
We can post it on the website like we've been doing with our other
Okay.
jobs.
And am I correct to presume that one crossing is the one that needs to be fixed on Rankin Lake Road, and the bulk of the work really is in the Garden Court? Is that a fair assessment?
I would say with the money here, there'll be equal amount of work on Rankin and Garden Court.
Okay, I know in the report you mentioned Cochrane Road as well.
That's at the back end, yes, there was asphalt damage, and
Okay.
that has to be fixed as well. This was all part of the overall settlement for Seguin Township.
Yeah, okay. Mayor, Terry Fellner's lost his, okay, his
Yeah,
connection.
I don't know whether Terry Felder lost his connection or left, but because he moved this, can I call, Gail, could you move it in Terry's absence? Okay, so Vincent, I'm assuming that Terry will rejoin.
Yeah, he said his internet's gone down and he's trying to get a hotspot off his phone in order to dial back in.
Okay, you're on the phone with him?
No, he texted me just as he, I guess, lost it. So,
Okay, because worst comes to worst, he can phone in. He has the phone numbers. Could I have all in favor of this motion? Okay, thank you, that's carried. Okay, we are moving now to the Development and Protective Services. Is this you, Craig, or Steve? Steve, okay. So you have a report in front of you about the emergency strategy for conducting virtual planning act and public meetings. This follows the provincial guidelines. Steve, do you want to introduce this a little bit before we entertain questions? Director Stone, are you there? Yep, there he is.
So, thank you, Madam Mayor, to rest of council. Actually, Craig and I were talking about this back when, I guess a week or two ago, and he thought it would be a good idea for us to write a report just outlining what other municipalities are doing with regards to conducting public meetings under the Planning Act. So this is based on some of our experience. We've had staff participate in other towns and cities' public meetings, and we've looked at various formats that are out there by other municipalities. And so we thought it would be good to sort of present this to council for their consideration and endorsement. One of the things that council is aware of is that we did have our virtual committee of adjustment meeting last week, and it was we dealt with 3 simple applications, but we did try to cover off all the bases for engagement with the public. We have an enhanced notice that allows people to contact municipal staff in advance and request virtual meeting ID. There's also the opportunity for them to provide written comments well in advance. And if they don't have virtual capabilities through platforms like Zoom, they can actually call in as well. We did post the new notices on the website, so they have access to the enhanced notice, as well as we did post on the door in case somebody just happened to be aware of the Committee of Adjustment meeting. And if they came to the door and tried to get in, they could have phoned then, and we would have invited them in, had them sanitized, and allowed to speak to the secretary chair, who was in the council chamber. The rest of the committee were live virtually at their place of residence. And so we haven't yet advertised for any council-related planning applications, but we do have a few in the hopper, and we could start advertising for things, simple things like consents to create right-of-ways. We have 1 or 2 that we could introduce to council in June if you think this is the right way to go in terms of public engagement.
Thank you. Councillor Moffat, you have a comment?
Well, some of it was covered off by Steve, and I guess sort of my overall question was, did it go as planned? Did you, you kind of touched on it, but do you feel that this is a method that would work, for a broader spectrum of stuff? Given this was a first time, so maybe one and done isn't the answer. But I just wanted to get a sense on how you felt that it went overall, and whether it's robust enough to be able to, if more public is involved, or questions and answers and stuff like that.
Well, certainly we did tiptoe, if you want to say, through 3 applications. They were rather simple applications. We were able to have agents join us as well. And some agents are more savvy with the Zoom call and connected well and left the meeting without being queued to leave the meeting. So it went well. We had one agent who didn't follow instructions, and as a result, we ended up connecting with him by phone. So to answer your question about really complex applications, shall we say, let's say we do get 20 or 30 individuals wanting to speak to a certain application. It might be challenging for the clerk to manage that on a Zoom call. We would certainly encourage them to provide their comments in writing, obviously in advance. But I think you're intimating that once we get into some very interesting and complex planning applications, there might be a challenge to hold those virtually. And what we certainly would do at that point is to advise council that we're in receipt of these applications. We think that they may be challenging to hold in this format, and seek direction from you folks. I know under the emergency, we're not obligated to hold public meetings. It may be that council sorts out which ones they want to deal with. So,
yeah, by establishing a new set of parameters, procedures, and stuff like that, that would accommodate hopefully a more robust application.
Now, we certainly we're musing about some of our bigger plans this summer, and we do have an outdoor pavilion, for example, next, and you could have a live air council meeting where we could impose like some form of social distancing around a mic, where people could congregate out and bring forward their comments to an open mic if it was sterilized, for example. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, just a comment, Steve. I thought at the Committee of Adjustment meeting that it went well. That dual capability, and just thought the whole thing went off well. It was easy. Wasn't any more difficult than it was with everybody in the room. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Steve, are you looking for more direction from council, or my personal feeling is keep going, keep trying opportunities. We're going to get into this with official plan and short-term cottage rentals. We're going to need public consultation, and for the time being, face-to-face is not on.
Well, the recommendation is really seeking council's sort of acceptance of the protocol as we've got it. Certainly, as Councillor Moffat says, if things do arise as we're rolling this out during the summer, we'll certainly make adjustments and advise council to that effect. So I guess to answer your question, what we're looking for is council's acceptance that this is good for now, and we'll monitor it as we roll it out.
Okay. Does council agree that they should keep going in this direction and modify as need be? I think you've done a lot of work, and I know it's not easy. So thank you for the work you've done. Council in agreement?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Stone. And I believe you are on the hotspot hot seat again for the report on the short-term cottage rental report. I participated in some of the conference calls, and I know there's been a fair amount of work go into this. You people have received a comment on this report in your addendum package from Karen Buck. I believe that that addendum should go into the information package basically as a public comment. But Steve, why don't you comment on this? I see it as a beginning. We have been very, very clear with everybody that's commented that we will endeavor to do some form of public consultation. As yet, we don't know what it is, but we know the public wants to comment. So, Steve, do you want to take us through the recommendation?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council. I guess I will draw council's attention to page 96, because this is really where the start of the operative regulation is, and it shows up as a definition, and it really tries to identify the definition really tries to identify what short-term accommodation is, and so it follows the pattern very similar to many municipalities in the province in identifying short-term accommodations as being the rental of a dwelling or a cottage for less than 28 days. So if people have been following the Blue Mountain, they sort of initiated that many years ago, almost 10 years ago now, I would think. And the last sort of large municipality to adopt something similar to this was the City of Toronto. What Leo and I have tried to do is sort of identify in the definition council's interest in commercial operators. So if you look at I guess it would be the fourth sentence down that talks about temporary accommodation or occupancy by way of concession, lease, license, rental agreement, or other similar commercial arrangements. So what we're, again, through this definition is really trying to identify commercial operators. So the Serenity Vacations, for example, the one that we got the settlement from. And then what we try to do is after the definition, if you go to page 97, is we would introduce a new general provision. Leo came up with this idea, is to introduce a new general provision. So STAs, even though they're defined in the bylaw, they're not actually permitted as a use. So if we come across somebody who is operating a commercial cottage rental scenario, then by definition, because they're not actually listed as a permitted use, we could say they're offside with the bylaw. Now, what the new section 4.38 would do is address some of council's concerns about, and I think you heard Leo refer to the casual rental of a personal cottage. So what it tries to do is, again, structure it in a way that it's less than 28 days, but it's not advertised or offered in any way for rent. So much like Serenity Vacation had a dedicated website and you could book any time of the year for that matter. And it also, it ties back into the short-term accommodation definition. So Leo thinks that's the best sort of compromise from what he heard from council, which is to go after the commercial operators that cause a nuisance within neighborhoods, because every week they have a new group of people. Some could be good renters, some could be bad. And then again, when you add this general provision, it allows for what council was hoping to do is allow for the casual rental. So again, from an enforcement standpoint, if this were to become part of the bylaw, we would, we still operate on a complaint basis. Excuse me. And if someone were to say, we've identified my neighbor has a commercial cottage for rent, excuse me, that was contagious. And they said, well, if you look on this website, here's how they're advertising it, then we would have a legitimate case to go to ask them to cease and desist because they would meet the definition in the bylaw of a short-term cottage accommodation. So the next steps would be, if council's comfortable with this approach, would be at some point in the future when you would like, we could sort of present this approach to the public and allow them to comment, and through that commenting process, further refine the regulations as they are today. And I shall say they're draft regulations. So.
Thank you, Director Stone. We have a question from Councillor Moffat.
So Steve, I just want to go back to, I have a couple questions. I just want to go back to one of your last points. So are you saying that if you found someone who's advertising, you would then say that in all likelihood it's by way of a concession permit, lease, license, rental agreement? Is that right? Okay? Yeah. So
and it also is the active advertisement, right?
Okay.
So, for example, we did have a complaint filed from somebody with a cottage in the Otter Lake area, and it was identified that they were on Airbnb, for example, which is a commercial site, and so we would investigate that and advise the landowner that they wouldn't meet the short-term accommodation regulation.
So one of the comments that have come forward to me, I'm just looking on page 97 under the 4.38, and I recognize that this is a draft.
Right.
To me, I have a small problem, and others have communicated it to me as well, is the limited or occasional rental of a cottage. To me, that implies a commercial activity by renting, and people have suggested maybe the word lend or the limited or occasional use of a cottage would be more, I guess, let's say tampered down, and not as much of a connotation as there may be funds. There may be, but not the same kind of connotation as the word rental. And I don't know if that was in the discussion you had with Leo, whether that, and some people may say, hey, use my place Monday to Friday if you give me a weekend of your time, not renting it, they're letting you use it. And I don't know if that was part of the discussion you had with Leo, whether that lend or use may fit in that.
Well, I would say that Leo was the architect behind this particular aspect of the regulation. We did originally, he wanted to actually put it in as a prohibited use in the bylaw, which I was concerned about. I suggested the general provision because that doesn't, now it allows it to be throughout the municipality in terms of the casualness of it, rather than specify. He was actually hoping just to specify it in the SR1, SR2 zone, for example, and maybe make it all a commercial use, which we identified that you can't introduce new commercial uses without amending the official plan and zoning bylaw. So he backed away from that. I think what he was trying to do then was pick up on staff suggestion about making a general provision, and he just carried over the notion of rental because it's in the definition that would go into 13. But I can certainly raise that with him about, as you say, it's by using the word use, it doesn't suggest a commercial activity like rental.
So thank you, Steve. Two quick follow-ups. To me, Leo kind of indicates that we shouldn't define commercial, but are we not kind of defining commercial by saying is not offered or advertised for rent? Isn't that, to me, that's our loose definition of commercial?
Well, we're being very specific in terms of defining what a commercial short-term accommodation is. So in that's, you're absolutely right. What Leo's referring to is that generally speaking, throughout the province of Ontario, municipal bylaws don't actually get into the meat of what is commercial because it's very, it's varied throughout that. And I did my own search as well, and it's very difficult to find in a land use regulation a definition of what commercial is. You might find it in an OP policy, but it usually just refers to areas, not a specific property like this bylaw is trying to do.
Okay. And the last comment, and again, when I read the words in the conclusion, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it says here, council should then direct staff to initiate an amendment to zoning bylaw in order to implement the desired regulation. To me, and I recognize the mayor did say that we were going out for public consultation. I may be reading too much into that, but I look at that, and I've heard from others that it seems that we've already hardwired the document, and here it is for public input versus getting more public input. And this is an example or a sample of what we are probably going to lean to, but we're open to interpretation. So we haven't, cast in stone, but the conclusion kind of leads me and others to, go there. And I'm hopeful that that isn't the case, that we are still, this is still being massaged before we get it to the next phase. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think there's absolutely no question that we've promised public consultation. I think I will comment, because I was on some of the conference calls, that we felt that there should be a draft. It's somewhat like putting a dartboard up there so you have something to throw the dart at. It doesn't mean it would pass. And I think your wording changes need to be considered. Councillor Cole, you have a comment.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to make sure my microphone's on. Yeah, I just, I've struggled with this for quite some time, and how my vote went on the original rental issue that we finally lost on. I like the way it's worded, and going forward to the public, letting them know that this was where we landed, but here are the options we chose from, and this is where we now see that we could go and ask for their input. I would be reluctant to agree to something that was so definitive that it looked to the public like there was no, why are we inputting anyway? We need to make sure that they are welcoming, that we're welcoming their input to this opportunity. I can tell you, in my constituency, there's a lot of people who rent their cottages, and they don't want to see big government coming in and controlling what they're doing. And it's how we present this that makes it palatable. And I for one, I don't think we can rely on the lake associations for valid input. They will have a voice, of course. But I know in the Otter Lake situation, more than 50% of the people on the lake are not members, and a lot of those people do rent the property. So I think it's really important that we make it look like we really are sincere about inviting their input. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. I have to agree with Councillor Moffat. Sorry?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
I thought Councillor Collins was having a problem. I agree with Councillor Moffat on the use of the word rental, because the use of that word infers a currency exchange. It doesn't necessarily say commercial, but just rental means when you rent something, you're paying for something. And I think we need to find a different word to describe that use, like he said, lend or use or whatever, because otherwise we're going to be contradicting ourselves, saying you can't rent your property, but you can, and we're going to use the word with two different definitions. The idea of having the summer to comment on this, I think we're going to end up on a split decision on this thing. We're really going to have difficulty, I think, appeasing the majority in any case. I'm not sure, Art, that we should go with your recommendation that we expose to the public all of the options that we had available, because some of them are like at one end and some are at the other end. yes, hard yes and hard no. Maybe some of that should be given in the middle of the road, given as options for the public to consider. But I have the problem I have is commercial, when we say that commercial doesn't need to be defined, and just before the general provision, furthermore, the township solicitor points out that most zoning bylaws do not define what commercial means, nor do they have a discrete commercial use definition. Well, we got to define it. One way or the other, in this bylaw, we are going to be defining it just by way of saying no money can change hands. You can't use Airbnb. You can't use home to go. And it's only like a handshake agreement between your cousin and your neighbor or your brother-in-law, right? And whether or not any money exchanges hands privately between them is none of our business. But we have to, at some point, wrestle with that term commercial and define it as best we can, so that we are clear that commercial means it's not open to the traveling public. By the way, on this draft, there was a typo you might want to correct, Steve. Just before 4.0, where it says the rental of cottage for temporary accommodation on to the traveling public, I think should read or. You might want to correct that before.
Bye.
Okay. Am I right, Steve?
Yep.
Which,
Yep,
what
I've got
page
it
are we
too.
looking at?
It's the last sentence, page. It's the second page, the last sentence before 4.0, regulatory option preferred by
Page
council
96.
as of April 6th. Yes. The last sentence,
Yeah,
rental of the cottage for temporary accommodation or to the traveling public, correct?
I think on shouldn't be there, but that's my take.
Yeah,
That the
it should
rental
either
of-
perhaps by.
Well, I think if you put or, replace it with or, it should read well.
Yeah, well, I'll take a look at it
All right.
for the next
Check your
report. It
grammar.
could, as the mayor says, it could be the word by should be there. So,
Anyway, that's my piece.
Yep.
I don't know how we're going, the one thing I question here is in this virtual world we're in, a public meeting on this could be like really huge. And I don't know how, maybe the clerk can answer this. When you hold a public meeting for public consultation, if we're still under these guidelines in the summer, how do people get to speak without having 2 or 3 parties jumping in all at once? How do you control that, Craig?
Well, in short, it's the same as Steve's last report. It may not be able to happen. If it does happen and we're still under these type of lockdown rules, you probably wouldn't be able to do that type of a public meeting because there could potentially be 60 or 70 people wanting to show up and speak at that meeting. So it may not happen. It may be postponed. We'll just have to see how things play out.
Okay.
There are moderator options. For instance, when the premier holds a mayor's call, there's 60 to 80 people on the call, but you have to pre-arrange with the moderator what you want to ask, and then the moderator says, okay, the mic is open for you, Mayor of Seguin. And so somebody can't, but you have to do that in advance. So it is complicated. It can be done. It probably involves a third-party moderator.
Yes,
But
where
I
the
think as
question-
we get
where the questions would be
There is a bit-
controlled, a limited number of questions from certain people and listed one at a time. Yeah.
There is one thing that you have to keep in mind, and this is why it may not happen here. It's all dependent on internet connection.
Yeah.
So if you have public who don't have that connection, or using Zoom or whatever you're trying to use, it may not happen if you can't get those people. They have to be permitted a way to make that participation. So real short answer
Access.
is, as we go forward, it's whatever we can do that works, that meets the requirements.
And
Okay,
I
summing
think-
up, just to sum up, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as we move through the agenda, I think you're going to see some creative opportunities when you get to the official plan review update of how they're planning to open multiple windows. So they're dealing with the same kinds of issues, so we just have to be open-minded about it.
Okay, so in summary, for the most part, I think council's on the same page here. This is a good document. It's a great start, Steve. I don't think we can boil it down any more and be more specific other than that term rental at this time. And if we can proceed in future with this document and try to get to public, I think we're on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Fellner, you have something to say? Oh, sorry, Director Stone wants to
No,
reply.
if I may, after council's had the discussion, I just have a suggestion, so.
Okay. All right, Councillor Fellner, you have the floor. But you're on mute. You're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Mute. Too many buttons. Am I unmuted now? Yeah, okay.
Bottom left.
So in 4.38, which is where you're dealing with the casual renter, right? What is the difference in the period? Is there a difference in the period of time that he can rent casually versus what they're saying would be a commercial operation? Like, are you
No,
limiting the number of times he could do that a year, or how are we differentiating it? Like, what's to stop someone from, because people are slippery, right? So they would rent their cottage, but they wouldn't post it on a website. It'd be word of mouth, and advertising a local pub or whatever it is where they're from. Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, how would you? So then you'd say, oh, well, you're doing this for commercial means. And said, no, I'm not. I'm renting to friends. So how do you see that being prevented? Because it looks to me like they could do that, under 4.38, right? As long as they didn't advertise.
that's right. That's right. So where the 28 days and why it's associated with the definition, it allows the continuity between the regulations from the definition to the general provision. So you asked the question about, can a person rent number of times? So the answer is yes, they can rent casually, but if it's proven, in a case we'd have to do an investigation. If it's proven that they are doing it by means that we haven't discovered yet, and it turns out that they are commercial, then we can link this casual one back to the definition of the commercialization of a cottage and say, yes, we've been able to prove through testimony of somebody who was rented, for example, or we found, as you say, we went to the pub the other day and found the tear off sticker and says my cottage is for rent, and here's how they're doing it. So we would have to establish a case on that. The issue is really the rental of something less than 28 days. So they could, if it's proven that they are commercialized, they're renting it every weekend of the summer, and that would be 3 days every week kind of thing, that would qualify them as a short-term cottage rental. You are correct. There are operators out there that are very innovative. For example, the short-term cottage rental site for Serenity, as soon as we were about to rent, we were actually doing we're going to try and get a rental from them. They took their website down. Mm-hmm. And put us at difficulty. They kept all their other sites up that were outside of Seguin, and it did take me about 2 months, but I did eventually find them on Fido. I guess it was the Fido rental agency, which was a pet friendly, and they had Serenity Vacation. So we were able to reintroduce that. They were advertising. They just had tried to block us in that regard. So again, Councillor Fellner, it is something where, if we have a complaint, we'll exhaust ourselves trying to verify that it is a commercial operation. And if there's enough evidence, then we'll come to council and say, we think we have a commercial entity here. Do you want us to proceed with a prosecution?
So I guess, so if it was a private cottage owner looking to rent his place, he could rent it for 3 weeks to a month to whatever, 2, 3, 4 times a year, and that's not gonna be an issue, is that? sort of
Well,
the way that-
that is correct. If he, say for example, that cottage owner rents for 29 days, he's not
Mhm.
subject to this regulation. If he
I
rents
see.
28 or less, then yes. But if that cottage owner rents, to a friend, family, or even somebody down the street from them in the city, we might not be in a position to investigate them if we don't get a complaint. They do it,
Right,
as you recall, with Serenity Vacation, we are having almost weekly complaints of congestion, parking, trespass, and so on and so forth. And that's when we ask council to pursue the court challenge. So.
good. Okay, thanks, yeah.
Councillor Collins, are you trying to make a comment? I haven't seen your hand up, but I.
Yeah, no, I had it up prior to, Mayor. I'm just, the questions that everybody's is asking right now, after we all sat and discussed this at our April 6th meeting with our attorney, should be, we should be talking to him again, because this is the final draft, or one of the final drafts prior to the public meeting. So if there's changes that need to be made in here, these changes should be addressed to our attorney, and before, I guess, it's even amended, because everybody's asking the same questions as we were asking back in April 6th.
I guess I will speak a little bit to that, because we made a commitment that once there was not a single property owner named or anything, that discussions of this type about short-term accommodations would be in the open part of our meetings so that the public could hear the deliberations. I do know that Mr. Longo's been involved in what Steve has presented here, and I don't think we'd go forward with any bylaw until he was in agreement that it was sensible and legal. But
Yeah.
I do think at this stage it's okay for all of us to maybe making wording suggestions and giving them to Steve, and the public doing the same, until we get to the stage that we're actually talking about writing a bylaw. So we want the input. And I don't think we need a lawyer to listen to all of it at this stage, because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Councillor Fellner, you have a further comment? Or is your little blue hand still up? Okay, thank you. Councillor Osborne, you have something to add.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, when you were answering Councillor Felder's question concerning the 29 days, I just want some clarity there. If someone were to rent beyond the 29 days on a casual basis, did you say that this provision would not apply?
So, yes, that is correct, because what say a month or two, let's say, I'll give you the example of somebody renting their cottage for 2 months for somebody. That wouldn't be considered a short-term accommodation.
Okay, so therefore that's outside of this.
That's right.
And
But
how would it be handled then?
Well,
Under what
again,
jurisdiction?
it would, let's say, for example, the 2-month cottage was causing problems related to parking, for example, or noise. They would be handled through those types of bylaws.
Okay.
Let's take the example of the 2-month cottage and just say that 2-month per cottage converts to renting every weekend. So because they're renting every weekend, it's not an aggregate 20, they can't aggregate all those weekends together to go 20. Oh, look, I've rented an aggregate of 29 days. So I'm therefore outside the bounds of this regulation. It's the differentiation is the single rental up to 28 days would be short-term accommodation and subject to council's interest. The person who rents 29 days or 2 months, for example, is not covered, not defined as a short-term accommodation.
Okay, one further question. If by complaint, we had this would be complaint driven. We had a complaint, and someone is in contravention of the zoning bylaw after amended, in other words, no commercial rentals. You mentioned prosecution. Would council need to be consulted before that prosecution? I think you mentioned that. And B, what would the penalty schedule be? That we haven't discussed that.
So best practice is yes. Council's been involved in a lot of our prosecutions to date. For example, some of because it's a zoning bylaw issue, we report to council saying we do have this violation. Do you wish us to proceed with any court action, for example? In terms of the fine schedule, if you want to say that, that's really a derivative of the Planning Act through its regulation. So you can have, it's separated into individuals and corporations. So you individuals, for example, they'd be subject to, a fine. They're not set fines, where a corporation would be subject to a double of what the max fine would be for a person. You still have to go in front of the justice of the peace or superior court, and it's really up to the judge to assess what they think is the fine. And they can be all over the map depending on the severity of the case presented to them.
But the range would be presented by the Seguin representative in that court. And then
That's
the
right.
judge.
Yes, I certainly
be within that. Okay.
If Leo, for example, was our attorney, he would go to just as he was doing with the settlement, he would be saying, these people, have rented, they've caused disturbance in the neighborhood for a couple of months, a couple of years, and we think this is an appropriate fine in their regard. And then their lawyer would say, well, it's the first offense, and can they not get a break time?
From there, right. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Councillor Moffat, I call this the last comment, and then I'd like to try and summarize and give Steve some direction.
Steve, you just raised, I had a second question but you raised an interesting point in your response to Councillor Osborne about a corporation or a trust. Well, I'm adding a trust to it. Generally, a corporation is in a commercial activity. So to me, they would be squarely in doing a commercial activity regardless of the definition. And I'm just wondering if that has been touched on with Leo in your discussions.
Well, in regards to fines,
No, sorry. In regards to the word, what we're saying is commercial in the connection of a corporation is incorporated to do commercial activity. So therefore they're automatically in a commercial activity. And I was just wondering if ownership, I guess maybe that's a better term, if ownership of the waterfront property was discussed in your back and forth with Leo, whether an individual, a corporation, or a trust fits. Maybe you're in there already, you may not be. I'm just wondering if that was part of the discussion, Steve.
I would say not to that, to the extent that you're talking about, mainly because the definition operates not on ownership, it operates on length of stay, if you want to, or length of rental. In this case, accommodations less than 25. If it's commercialized, whether you're a single owner or a corporate owner, you would still be offside from the bylaw.
Okay, thank
But
you.
certainly if
Yeah.
the mayor's looking for a summary, that could be something that's presented to Leo at the next time we bring this matter forward.
I think to me, it's an important, again, you raised it in that response on fines, and I think it never triggered, but I think it's an important issue that we may want to make sure that ownership, we can prosecute, or you're in or out or whatever it is on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I'm going to try and summarize, but I want everybody to make sure I'm doing it correctly. What I'm hearing from the councilors is that they're generally happy with this as a starting place for public discussion. And we would like to have staff bring back a plan for how to get public discussion. But I would suggest that your last, the last paragraph on page 97, I heard some people say that we should change the wording to say that we're not directing staff yet to initiate an amendment to a zoning bylaw. We are simply proceeding to public consultation on a potential amendment to a zoning bylaw. Because I do think the way that paragraph is worded implies the water's already gone under the bridge. And really, we've had some good wording suggestions today, some interesting questions. I think there's some interesting questions that have been raised in Karen Beck's correspondence. So, Steve, can I give you the assignment to come back with a plan on how to recommend public consultation? And like the official plan, I think it needs to have lots of opportunities in it for the internet savvy and the non-internet savvy. Maybe we have an outdoor meeting, maybe we don't. I do really agree with Councillor Cole that we cannot take the wording or the words delivered by chairs of lake associations as representative of all parts. Not everybody's a member, not everybody agrees. So I think the plan needs to be, how can we structure public consultation in the COVID-19 environment without telling them that we're not even doing it. We're not yet amending a zoning bylaw. We're putting forward a suggestion. One suggestion that I have thought about and saw at another township was they had like scenarios. If somebody was this kind of a family renting for this many days in this many years, what would happen under our bylaw? And that might be a layman's way of evaluating the bylaw. It's just a suggestion. I look to Steve and his team to figure out how best we can get input from all the types of people. When you're out as counselors, talk about it. Make notes. Write it down. And by then, I hope we'll all know how other people could put their official comment in. One last comment. It is not recorded as official correspondence to the township unless the clerk is copied. So, I mean, we can set that up in our websites and that kind of thing, but you need to say that somebody writing to you doesn't make it a comment to the township. They need to copy Craig. Is that fair, Craig?
Well, it's the office.
Yeah, or the office, or info at township. Steve, do you have the direction you need? Yes or no?
No. Actually, what the recommendation, I know you guys were focusing on the conclusion, but the recommendation is, as simple as it is really seeking further direction. So if you may, I would simply say you're directing staff to further refine the bylaw, the draft bylaw with references, for example, to use rather than rental. And you suggested trying to come up with an idea of how to engage the public further with regards to this. And it was sort of alluded to in the conclusion part about releasing it to the public. What we could do is do that through posting the final, if you want to call it, next, come back to council next month and have the subtle word refinements as done tonight. Present that again to council for your consideration, and then go from there to simply post this next report on the website and invite the public to provide comments through the normal channels, through you as councillors, through the website if they want to respond to mail@seguin.ca, for example. And I think that's the simple way of providing us with direction. So.
Okay, well, I'm comfortable with that you'll come back with another stab at this next meeting. Councillor Fellner. You have to take yourself off mute.
I'm just wondering, like, I think this is great, as far as you've gotten with this, and I think it's the right approach, and I tend to agree with Councillor Coles and the mayor with regards to the Lake Association. I'm just wondering, Steve, do you think if you're going to take it so far and then we're going to present it to the public and say this, this is where we think maybe the best approach is, should we be putting out, should you be sort of analyzing why we think it is, like, if we go this way, here are the pros, here are the, just sort of explain our rationale a little bit? Do you think that, would that help sort of assimilate the idea into the public,
Yeah.
Because when you sort of first get this document and you start reading it, it takes a while to sort of, figure out what exactly it's saying,
Yeah, most definitely. If for example, you like the next version of the regulations, we can prepare a background document for public consumption. We can put that. I would also go so far as to build into that background information sort of the resolution of council that this is where council's got with this matter, and the public is then welcome to share in the discussion and further refine it.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Osborne, one last comment.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Steve, that there should be some sort of preface to that to indicate to the public why we even went down this road.
Right.
The fact that it has interrupted the serenity of people at their cottages, the reason for us even getting into it. And then secondly, I think you need to go further than just the website, and maybe social media and press release at the right time once we're configured would be good too, to get the word out to as many people as possible as to what we're doing and why. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for a robust discussion. I'm going to move on to item G. Oh, right, okay. So I'm going to remind you that this is a motion that was deferred on the April, I forget which meeting. It was deferred, and it's come back to us. In your addendum package is a copy of this deferred motion. So I read it again. Is it still on the floor, or do I have to get new movers and seconders? Okay. So this was moved by Gail Finson and seconded by Ted Collins. Whereas Bell Mobility proposes to erect a 29.9 meter high monopine telecommunications tower and supporting structures at 399 Stanley House Road, part of Lot 24, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Humphrey, now Township of Seguin. And whereas the proponents of telecommunications towers and supporting structures require the approval of Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada on behalf of the Government of Canada, and as part of the approval, INSED, which is Industry, Science, Economic Development Canada, requires such proponents to consult with local land use authorities prior to the erection of antennae systems, as provided in CPC-2-0-03, and the proposed tower and supporting structures is considered an antennae system. And whereas the Corporation of the Township of Seguin is a local land use authority. And now therefore be it resolved, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby acknowledge, A, that the Township is satisfied with Bell's consultation process, and B, the proposed design and location is acceptable to the Township, and C, the Township has been consulted and concurs with the tower location. So there's significant documentation in your agenda package about this, in fact, well over 100 pages. You've had an opportunity to read it. And Councillor Osborne, you have a comment.
Yes, referring back to that April 20th meeting where we deferred this motion. The reason we deferred because we felt that some residents hadn't been answered properly by Bell. And I wonder if there's an update on those requested answers.
In your agenda package is a written answer to every individual that wrote to them. That's all there.
Okay, and they have been answered by Bell?
They have. A lot of the comments were about lights, and
Yes.
they have been ruled that they do not need lights on this.
Right.
I cannot comment whether all of the people that got replies from the Bell agent are satisfied, but they didn't rewrite. So they all got an answer. But
Okay, so at this point, it says here for information, but we are having to refer back to that April 20th resolution, even though it says conclusion, council should receive this report for information purposes at this time. Are we still going to be voting on this resolution?
can I ask the clerk to comment on that?
Yes, that motion was deferred pending this further information, and it's now back.
Okay,
So yes,
thank
we are
you.
being asked for vote. Councillor Fellner, this is in your ward, I believe. And you have a comment. Mute, you're on mute again. Can you unmute your microphone, please?
Sorry about that. I think I get the hang of this one of these days. Yes, it's in my ward, and I've been speaking to some of the my constituents that objected on the basis of insufficient information, the Marshes and the McIntoshes, and they elected not to send a formal email to the clerk this time. They wanted to know that I'd convey that they're still not totally satisfied. I think the issue here is the Bell originally came up with 3 locations. Threw 2 out, said they're not sufficient, and we want to. This is the third one's the best. But what they weren't able to do, in my mind, anyhow, it's certainly the location they're proposing is going to give much better coverage to the area than what it currently enjoys. I mean, that the latest mapping shows that, but they never did the homework on the other 2 areas so you could properly compare the merits of all 3 to say, okay, this one's so much better that this is the one we should pick. And I think to their point, that to the Marshes and the McIntoshes, that was their major objection. In my mind, they still haven't done this. All that really had done is it demonstrated how the area in general will benefit from better service.
Can I ask a question of Director Stone? Does Bell actually need our permission, or could they go ahead with this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To rest the council, the request for concurrence, if they get a positive response from the township, really speeds up their application. If council does not provide concurrence, then they would have to petition Industry Canada for the approval of this site in the absence of municipal endorsement on that. So it's really a function of process and timing that this concurrence is being requested. But at the end of the day, Industry Canada is the approval authority, and they can they basically have carte blanche approval over these types of installations. But they did set it up in such a way that if you do provide concurrence, the project will move ahead expeditiously, shall we say.
Thank you. I'll throw in 2 more cents worth for those of you that have proceeded on through business in the agenda and the regional broadband strategy update that I included. You can see that we're very hopeful that there may be some federal money for a township-wide solution in the next few weeks. There's no question that this tower is going to improve service to some people, but it may be viewed by some of the other ISPs as picking the low-hanging fruit off and making it not a business option for others. So that is my personal concern. But do you have a further comment, Councillor Fellner?
Yes, when you're done, when you're done.
Oh, go ahead. No, I just see your little blue hand. I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well, as far as I understood from Bell, that this tower is primarily 5G for voice communication and data, not really a high-speed broadband solution. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I misunderstood. My other concern is and I think Councillor Moffat knows the number, but there's at least 2 more of these installations contemplated within the township. So we've seen examples of some of the other carriers, such as Rogers, I believe was one, where they analyzed all 3 sites, and then they came to the conclusion of what was the best site all around, right? Coverage, cost, what have you. And they demonstrate that they'd done their homework. What Bell had indicated to us here is they looked at 3 sites, threw 2 out the window right off the get-go, didn't really do any work on it, and just concentrated on this one. So my point is that sort of what we want to take for all 3 of these sites? I mean, to me, it sure, I mean, it's going to work great, right? But who says 2 couldn't have, location 2 couldn't have worked great too? We got nothing really to base this on, right? I mean, in the end of the day, it may not matter what we think. To Director Stone's point, at the end of the day, it might not matter what we think anyhow, right? So my money is, but on the other hand, there's people in my ward that support this tower and they want better service for their cell phones too. So I guess it's really, did Bell really do all the homework they should have before they, and I'm not that convinced that they have.
Yeah, and I can confirm that anything with a monopine is based on mobility technology, and so it would probably improve cell service. It will improve some internet, but it will likely have a data cap, like the Rogers and Bell plans that everybody else has. The fiber that's currently being laid south of Rosso by Bell is fiber that will go to a tower that will then support wireless communication to individuals' homes, which is way more future-proof and has no data cap.
Right.
So, excuse me. I guess I need to give you that from the technology point of view. Councillor Moffat.
Just following up on Councillor Fellner's comment, I think what we lack is a process or a standard that we would expect as a township to evaluate the various options that are being thrown at us. And at this stage, we are in a sense guessing as to whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And we don't have any boxes to tick. We don't have anything, whether it's CRTC standards, health concerns, coverage, environmental, fees, all those kind of things. We don't even have I think we lack a plan or a process to be evaluating these. And I think that's where, if we had that, I think we would be better off, and we could demonstrate that to the companies coming in and saying, look, this is our process and we need these things ticked. We need these things completed. And once that occurs, then we're in agreement. Otherwise, we can't support it. So I think we're missing that. And I think that's, to Councillor Fellner's comment, is that if we had all those, if that was done for all the sites and for the other two that have 3 different sites on those other 2 proposed, we wouldn't have to debate it as much, because we would expect the company to come in with the answers to our process.
Thank you, Councillor Moffat. I will take that comment back to the regional committee, because I think all of the townships are struggling with how and on what basis do we evaluate all these applications. So I think that's a very valid comment. I'll take it back and see if I can create some sort of a checklist with the techie experts.
Well, I have a checklist already started, so I can forward that to you.
Okay, why don't you share it with me before tomorrow
Okay.
afternoon? My meeting's at 2.
Will do. It'll be out here in a few minutes.
Okay, great, thank you. Director Stone, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the rest of council, what Councillor Moffat's referring to is an actual telecommunication protocol. I've worked on 3 in my past lives in Southern Ontario. So yes, there are examples where municipalities have passed their own requirements for, sort of, as Councillor Moffat says, spelling out what are the requirements and how they go about doing their searches. So they are available. I can certainly bring a few of those bylaws or protocols to council for your consideration.
Great. I'd love to see a couple of them too, to take to the broadband committee.
Yeah,
So thank you.
good idea.
So I need to call a vote on this. We have a motion on the floor. It was deferred April 20th. All in favor of the A, B's, and C's, satisfied with Bell consultation, proposed design and location is acceptable, and the township has been consulted and concurs with the tower location. Those are the basic elements of the motion. All in favor? Councillor Osborne is the sole vote. So can we defer it? Opposed? Do I have opposition to this motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's defeated then. Thank you very much, and I will continue. Any protocols that anybody has, I'd love to see. Let me get back to me. Okay, Steve, I think we need you again to take us through the official plan review process. The report is comprehensive. The one thing that I couldn't see in it, but I believe it all rests with Mr. Winia, is timeline. But Steve, can you take us through, if people have questions, to direct to Director Stone? And it's on page 231 of the agenda package.
Wow. 231. There we are. My apologies, took me a bit to get there. So thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council. The consultants team and Seguin staff team met virtually to discuss where we're at, and the report sort of outlines succinctly what we discussed, what were the actions arising from that discussion. And one of the big things for council's consideration is the structure of the steering committee. And so that's presented to council. In essence, it would involve 7 members with 2 project team people there. And we sort of, again, Michael and I talked about the structure of the committee, who would be on it. And one of the things that Michael said that as the discussions on the OP policies progress, he said there's flexibility in the structure in the committee that, say, for example, they needed more of a commercial focus, then they could take one of the committee members out and put in somebody of council's interest that would cover a particular topic. So it's his, I guess, assessment that the committee structure is very workable in terms of its size. And he says also, if council wants, it can certainly be flexible as the project progresses. I did have a conversation with his team support. We did get some information to them on things on our capabilities from a Microsoft standpoint, so they have that. They were advised on the branding today as well, and there was I guess an opening message to be provided by the mayor, and that will be in transit very shortly. So we are scheduled to meet again on Thursday, and it looks like we'll be having these types of meetings on an ongoing basis weekly if we can fit it into our schedules. But next steps would be really, if council is agreeable to the committee, Michael will be given some names, or council can give the names to us now, and we can forward that on to Michael for population of the committee. The other thing too that Michael was saying is that the website interface is almost ready to launch. They'll be hosting it with links onto and through our website, so folks will have opportunity to access it directly through the consultant or through our website as well.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, the steering committee, it says it's made up of 7 members, 2 project leads.
That's right.
Is that static? Can it be larger to include more of the population, or is there a legislative limit to the number of?
No, to answer your question, it's not static. It can be, at this point, this is what we're, from a functionality standpoint, Michael and I are suggesting the committee structure at this size. But let's say you proceed with this arrangement, but we get into an issue. Let's say, for example, the short-term cottage rental becomes an official plan policy issue, and you want to enlarge it to include more representation throughout the municipality. Certainly council can say, yes, at that point, we've encountered this issue. We'd like to change the committee structure to deal with this particular land use matter or policy matter. And you can go through that exercise and then revert back to the 7 after those issues have gone away.
Okay, I just like to comment that it seems to be this committee thus far seems to be pretty council heavy, with the mayor and 2 councillors representing 3 of the 7, other than the leads. I don't think it leaves enough space for the general population, whether they be year-round residents, seasonal residents. I see a large lake association and a small lake association. That'll be tough to define. But other than those lake association representatives, and while I'm on that topic, I've suggested to one lake association that when I don't know if they'll all have their chance to put forward their request to be on this steering committee, how you mentioned, Steve, that we can come up with names or people that should be on the committee. I'm kind of at a loss for that, because how do I pick and how do I make a list of names? The one fear I have is that if you haven't, you discussed the Lake Association thing earlier. If you select, for example, Otter Lake as a small lake association, and the chair or the president of that association represents that association, is that a good representation? I think not. I think in a case, if someone like Otter Lake were selected, it would be better for that association as a group at their annual meeting, as a group to select, not the president, but who they feel would be the best representative of their group. So, and that, I had a discussion with Karen Buck about that as well. We have to watch that we don't, pin, that we don't have too much power shown in here from heads of council, heads of lake association, the top echelon, as opposed to the average Joe, because it's this should represent the public at large. So that's my one hesitancy. There's going to be a lot of questions on how you construct this thing. That's why I asked you, Steve, are we limited to the 7? Because it's not very broad when there's 3 of them from council.
I do know that there's some negotiation. I don't know, I can't remember which one was on which side, but it started out at 5 with one person and at 9 with another, and I know that the negotiated end up with 7. And I do draw your attention to my email of May 7th when I asked if any of the councillors had suggestions for membership on the steering committee, and to the best of my knowledge, I didn't get any, and neither did Steve. So I hear what you're saying about having lake associations maybe nominate, but I'm gonna guess that many of the lake associations are having trouble figuring out what to do with an AGM this year. Some are going virtual, some are having barbecues, some aren't. It'll be a very long process if we waited for every lake association to monitor. But I hear what you're saying, Councillor Osborne. I just don't know how to make that happen. Councillor Fellner.
Yeah. Hang on. Am I live here? Okay.
Yep, you're live.
Last time. I think the number that you've come to is probably the right number. My experience is anytime you get committees that are substantially bigger than that, they get pretty unwieldy and get a little dysfunctional. I do have the same concerns with the Lake Association, as we've heard. I guess what I really want to find out is how are we intending to, if we're going to pick one year-round resident in the township and one commercial sector representative in the township, and I'm not really arguing that that's the wrong number, but how are we going to do that? We've got lots of qualified people, I would think. Whether we got lots of qualified people that have a desire to sit on our steering committee is another question. How do you intend to, what's the sort of the thought process there, Steve? To fill, the mayor's easy because we only have one of them. So, and we just got to pick 2 out of 6. That's fine. The lake associations are next on the list. They're a bit more simple. But then, how do you, what are you thinking there?
Well, thank you. I guess the truth of it is that staff would certainly take the suggestions of council with regards to folks that they want to have on the committee with them. And then what we would try to do, as you pointed out, Councillor Fowler, is to see if those suggestions bear fruit and that they want to sit on the committee. So I think what we would do is, try to present a list of potential committee members for council's consideration at the next meeting. We would certainly field council's suggestions at that point, and then present that to you. And if you find the list of people that you're suggesting, we would then try to see if there's interest out there from those potential committee members.
Let me just interrupt for a second. Councillor Osborne, have you left the meeting? I'm going to assume yes until we hear back from him. So the clerk needs to record that.
He's not
Okay.
sure, he's there.
He's
I think-
there, but his camera is off, but he may have left the
Yeah.
room.
I had some internet problems earlier, kept bouncing.
Councillor Finson, you have something to add?
Can you hear me? Am I on? Yes.
Yep.
What I wanted to say was that we have on here large lake and small lake associations, and we just discussed the matter of not only half of the lake people are represented by their associations. So if you have somebody from a large lake, somebody from the lake association, somebody from the small lake, you know what I'm saying? The lake associations don't really represent the people on the lake, is what we just discussed in previous things, is that if you go to the lake association, you're only going to get their point of view. Same with the short-term rentals. We discussed that we would only get one point of view for the people that live on that lake. So I just thought it was important to, I don't know, it's important to have the lake associations, but it's also important to have the people that live on the lake, just to have their representation. I know it's going to be difficult no matter who you choose, but I just wondered if that would be that's all I had to say, is that it came to mind when I saw it, that we just discussed that only 50% belong to those associations. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Councillor Coles. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Just a comment. I know we've put forward a number of 7, but what if each councillor was to recommend somebody from his ward to sit on the committee? That would add an extra 6 people, but is that unmanageable? So we
think it could be manageable, but I think we do need to cover issues like commercial part-time.
No, exactly. That would be part of the selection process. Knowing who we've got on our lake associations as an example, and other individuals who have strong community interests who may be willing to participate. If each of us selected somebody from our ward,
They could be alternates.
yeah, or maybe they're part of the full committee.
Okay.
Just my suggestion.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting suggestion. Rod, you've rejoined the meeting, correct?
Yes, I have one quick one. One
Okay, well,
comment.
just a minute. Director Stone has the floor. I was just checking you were back in the meeting. Director Stone. If we asked all councillors to give us 3 or 4 names in the next week with kind of what they represent, whether they're a business or whatever, could we then, with Michael, distill that down to 7 or whatever? But we need those suggestions. I mean, we did ask for them on May 7th and we got nothing. So we need, if you want to put names forward, we will take them between now and next Monday. But in order to keep the OP moving, we need to do that. And I would suggest that each councillor should speak to the people whose names they're putting forward, ask them if they're interested, and ask them if they have a time for a weekly meeting. Probably will be virtual, but they need to devote that time before we start distilling. Are you comfortable with that, Steve?
Certainly. We welcome the suggestions, and that way we can sort of get that list of names prepared for council's consideration. Like I said, if we can, we'll get it to the first meeting in June. And then to answer sort of Councillor Cole's suggestion about a larger committee, just to give a bit of history, it was Marissa from the consulting team who suggested 5 at the council meeting. We met them out in the sort of lobby saying we thought that was too small, suggested 9. And if you want to say a compromise was 7, and the structure again was discussed with Michael, and he was comfortable with the structure. Now, come the meeting in June, if council wants to have a larger committee in a different structure, as Councillor Osmond suggested, with less councillors on it, bear in mind the staff, the leads really, well, our role is not so much to be a part of the committee, but just provide sort of insight where insight is requested of council. So, but certainly we welcome the suggestions, names and the structure, and we can sort of have that resolved at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Moffat, you have a further comment?
No, I have a first comment.
Okay.
So just to follow up on Councillor Finson's, I'm wondering, dropping the word association, large lake representative, small lake representative, I think is what would be where she was going. I also had a number of discussions with some people, and again, it's a bit of a variation here, is why not, if almost all these meetings are virtual, I'm not sure why we wouldn't have alternates. You have one, a primary person who would be attending the meeting and speaking, and you would have an alternate that could attend virtually anyways, and they're listening in, and there's a sounding board and whatever. So you could, in essence, double the numbers, but you're not actually increasing the committee size. Right. But you're getting more of a broader group, and they can go back and then they can start to disseminate, and it's quicker for two people than one. I have a question for the clerk. Is this a paid honorarium committee?
That would be up to council, but it's not at this point unless council changes that.
And
Okay,
it's not in our budget.
That's fine. No, I just put it out there. Could we, and I recognize that this won't speed up the process, but as we've done with the other committees, we went to public, we did an announcement and everything else. I recognize time is of the essence, but I'm just wondering if at least to have people put their name forward, at least we've invited it that way. So that's just a few thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fellner.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, did everybody get a chance? Yeah, I was going to say, I like the idea that was just proposed about representing small lake, large lake. And I also like the suggestion for the alternate. I think that makes quite a bit of sense. I guess I'm of the opinion that this OP review is a council-driven review, and that council needs to be represented on this steering committee. So Rod, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit there. I think it's very important for council to be cognizant of exactly what's going on in this review every step of the process, and I think by having a vested interest in the process as a group will ensure that for us all collectively. That's my opinion. So I think that I like the composition with the changes. I can come up with a few names. I think the mayor's suggestion is an excellent one. Like, don't suggest somebody that you haven't talked to and discussed with. And I think we could, we could move right through this process. All right.
Councillor Collins.
It's still going to be hard to figure out.
Councillor Collins, were you trying to get the floor? I didn't see any blue hands beside your name.
No, I'm fine. I happen to agree with Councillor Moffat that there should be alternates on this committee as well, in case somebody just can't make it. Yeah, I don't think the numbers are a big deal. 7 could be the magic number, but if we had alternates in case somebody can't make the meeting, that'd work as well, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent. Councillor Vincent? Oh.
Sorry, I didn't take my hand down. But while you have me, I think it would be great to have alternates that the person discussed things with later, like they could just listen into the meeting and then the two people discuss, so that if you're away so that way you could get all council covered. So everybody would have somebody to talk to about what's happening in the OP, because I know some people are more knowledgeable than others, and it would be really nice to be in on it. For me, as being somebody new, I'd like to know what's happening, when it's happening, so that I could, I could share in the experience and maybe have some input. Maybe I would have some input. So it would be nice to have the alternate, the person that's on the committee, to share that with the alternate. It was just, anyway, that was
Okay,
what.
thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Osborne, last comment, and then I'm going to summarize next steps.
Well, here I am. So, Councillor Fellner, I agree with you. This is a council-driven procedure, and I agree the mayor and two councillors should be on this committee. It was just, my concern was the size of the committee, the percentage of council on the committee. But with the alternates, that would expand the actual membership without having an unwieldy meeting at any one time. And those alternates can decide between themselves, the two in each category, as to who's going to attend the next meeting. So we'd actually end up with 10 people instead of 5 people from the public contributing at different times, but at the same time being able to run the meeting smoothly, Steve. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to suggest then that any councillor that has names that fit into any of these categories, I agree, let's take out the word association and call it a big lake or a little lake representative. Any councillor that has any suggestions in any of the categories, get them to Steve by Monday of next week, which must be the 25th or something. And please make sure you've talked to them, and if you can, note on them what category they fit into. They're a commercial person or they're year-round or whatever. And then working with Mr. Winia, we'll try and get a working committee of 7 off the ground. Alternates will give us more kind of reaches out into the community, and I think that's an interesting way to go about it, as long as the primary and alternate kind of agree to be in cooperation and communication and talking from the same song sheet. So we have concrete next steps to have lists. Oh, the clerk has questions?
So just one question. So then June 1st is to come back to council for approval, and
Yeah, June 1st, the steering committee will come back to council. And by June 1st, Director Stone, we expect you to have spoken to the people who are actually being named in the steering committee, if you can. Is that fair?
Certainly, I'll, with that list, I'll contact people and see if there's interest, and we can kind of fill in the slots sort of temporarily until council's given the yay and nay to that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And let's keep it moving as best we can. Thank you very
Thank you,
much for all
Council.
the
Thank
you've done on it.
Thank you.
Okay, this is motion for the bylaw enforcement officer's contract, that bylaw number 2020-046, being a bylaw to extend service contracts with Chris Everett, Earl Smallwood, Phil West, and Gary Klockstra for the provision of services as bylaw enforcement officers, animal control officers for the corporation of the Township of Seguin, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Ward 3, please?
So moved.
And seconded by Ward 4.
Seconded.
Thank you. Dawn, do you want to speak to this? Chief Hood, do you want to speak to this in any way?
No, I think it's self-explanatory. I certainly will answer questions if anyone has any.
Okay, being no questions, oops, sorry. Councillor Osborne.
Thanks, Mayor. Don, I didn't realize that our 4 municipal bylaw officers, I know they were shared between us and McDougall. I didn't realize that they did some part-time for the town of Parry Sound on call in the evenings.
They have done that. This will be year number 3.
Okay.
And basically it probably ends up about, for most of them, 1 to 2 calls a month.
So it's very minor.
very minor, like all the noise issues in the town is looked after by the OPP. So it's mainly dog issues in the evening.
So a question for you before this renewal. Are we sufficiently staffed, considering we're sharing with McDougall, are we sufficiently staffed with bylaw officers? Especially, you know, I'm looking forward to say 21 when the short-term rental rules may apply. Do you see that we may need to up-staff at all with our bylaw officers?
You would need, I believe, consistency. 4 hours a day is not enough time. If there is further bylaws that have to be looked after, possibly then there would be a change of structure required. But until we know what that is, it's in my mind, best guess.
Okay, one last question. A ratepayer called me today complaining about the Humphrey landfill site and all the trash left there again from a long weekend. Are we still monitoring our transfer sites from time to time? And if we're not, can more consideration be given to late Sunday, early Monday monitoring on these sites to help prevent some of this illegal dumping?
Yeah, we are. We've had extra officers on for a 3 or 4 hour period in the afternoons. And unfortunately, people come and go, and it seems that either they come and keep going or they come, you can't get them all at the same time. So that's the challenge.
Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Don, are these individuals considered to be independent contractors, or are they employees of the township?
They're contractors.
And it's standard practice to give them a cost of living adjustment, which would be considered for employees?
That's the way it has been since I've been chief, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Being no other questions, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the renewal of the contract? Can I have anybody voting on the renewal of the contract?
Yeah, we're all up.
We're all up.
We're all up.
Oh, maybe my internet.
Refresh your screen, Mayor.
You see the hand?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, so it's carried. Thank you, sorry. Our internet comes and goes here too.
Should get broadband.
I hope. Okay, we're moving into bylaws now. That bylaw number 2020-045, being a bylaw to amend Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-007-02500, application number R 2017-0019-H for 1 Portage Lake Road, Curtis, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion from Ward 5?
I move.
You, and seconded by Ward 6.
I second that.
Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about the background, where this comes from? Because we should know all about this one.
This being the Curtis bylaw, yes. As council knows, there was a LPAT hearing that was conducted, I guess a month ago now. There was an oral decision and a written decision. On the decision was to approve the consent and the rezoning. The board doesn't have the power to pass the bylaw, only council does. So the order is requesting, and the memo from the solicitor, our solicitor, is requesting council pass the bylaw to enact the rezoning on the property.
You, Councillor Osborne.
Do I have a recorded vote on this one, Mayor?
Okay, we need a recorded vote.
No.
Okay. So you want to take the paper back, and then you'll call them. Claire, sorry.
Just as a point of clarification, so that council is aware, because
Yeah.
we did ask. If council refuses to do this, you could be subject to, well, not could be, sorry. Let me pull out the legal.
Yeah.
So I'll just read this to you. The LPAT, this is from our legal counsel. The LPAT decision is final and binding under Section 34 of the LPAT Act, and the LPAT has directed that the township amend the zoning bylaw in accordance with the draft zoning bylaw amendment. Unless the decision is reviewed or there's a motion for leave to appeal, the decision must be complied with. LPAT expects that the parties will respect and comply with its decisions. However, if council decides not to approve the bylaw, then any individual or group, such as Curtis, could request a certified copy of the decision and file it with the Superior Court, where it can be enforced as a certified court order. I would think council would want to avoid having a court order directed for it to discharge its obligation.
Okay, is everybody clear? Councillor Fellner, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Steve about this memo from Kim Mullen. So, Curtis has got a bunch of conditions he's got to fulfill, correct?
That's correct.
So I guess if we pass this bylaw, site-specific zoning bylaw, and he doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't fulfill these conditions, right? And it's happened before in other severances, as you well know, for whatever reason. Then what happens? Does the bylaw become null and void, or?
No, the bylaw deals with land use under Section 34. So once it's passed, it's enacted. It comes into effect. The consent's a little different. They have a year to satisfy what they call the provisional conditions.
Right.
If they don't, it will lapse. And then they would have to reapply to council again and go through that exercise to create the lot. But the zoning would be on top of the land, even though the boundary of the properties haven't been divided.
But then if the lot isn't divided, then the zoning's sort of redundant anyhow, right? Because you can't.
Well,
right.
Well, I wouldn't say it's redundant. It's just, it's in place. That's the issue. And they are, from a building standpoint, they would be in conflict because of other provisions in the zoning bylaw, which would have to be eliminated by a fresh amendment, or just carrying on and finishing the consent as they've tried to do. So.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to get some clarification of why is it, like, he's got a year, and I guess now he's gonna have a year after, starting when the COVID-19 crisis is passed, so it's gonna be well over a year. Then why are we compelled to pass the zoning bylaw now? I guess is my question.
Well, because because of LPAT's decision, the order has come down, and that's what LPAT's doing, and that's the advice of your lawyer.
But we don't have any kind of time frame to comply. We're supposed to do it right away. Is that?
Well, typically, yes. You know, once a decision has been rendered by the OMB LPAT, it's typical for councils to follow suit with the order.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
I have a couple questions. One to the clerk. What were you reading from, Craig? The LPAT decision?
In answer to Councillor Moffat, I am reading from our legal counsel because I thought ahead about what may occur here at council. And I asked her, I have never had a council not follow an order from the OMB or now LPAT. happen, and she was quite clear that if you do not do what is ordered and directed by LPAT, you will end up in court. It will cost the township money, and the court will enforce it. So
Okay,
this is really your last step, and you've already had the order from LPAT.
okay. So,
Okay.
sorry, I had a follow-up. So just to go back to Steve and Councillor Fellner's comment, we are approving the severance with this bylaw?
No, the LPAT approved the severance
Okay, so we are
and
approving.
issued conditions. What you're approving is the zoning related to that severance.
Zoning.
Okay,
And I wouldn't say, I shouldn't say approve, that's a bad choice of word. You are enacting the approval on the LPAT's approval of the zoning. So that's it's a distinction. They've ordered, they've granted the approval. You are their instrument in terms of the bylaw because only you can enact it.
Okay, I'm gonna
Thank
call
you.
for a vote. Thank you,
Question,
everybody.
question? My hand's up.
So sorry, Councillor Osborne.
I missed the earlier part of the meeting due to my Zoom problems. But a question's been swirling around amongst councillors while we're on the subject of this and the report from Kim Mullen from Wood Bull. Do we have a final tally of what that legal jaunt cost us?
I'll refer that to the clerk, or,
We don't have a final, we don't have all the invoices in, but I will ballpark it between 25 and 30,000.
There's more to come, Greg?
There certainly will be if you defeat this bylaw.
What if we don't?
Then there will be the final invoice to come from Wood Bull.
Wow, so that could be another $5,000 or what? What do you
They
estimate?
bill at the end of every month, at the beginning, they bill monthly.
Okay,
So the question, for instance, that I had to pose to them, whether or not, if council decides to pass this bylaw and act it, that will cost us.
okay. Oh, Councillor Fellner, you have a comment? Okay, last
Yeah,
one.
just one last question, Steve. So really what in the zoning bylaw, what we're really passing is the requirements that we had, or the septic gets set back 30 meters instead of the 20 meters, et cetera, right? In the scope, yeah, okay, that's fine. Now,
Okay, so I'm gonna call for a vote, and the clerk will call the councillor by councillor. Please speak up as you answer.
Councillor Cole,
Yay.
Councillor Collins,
A reluctant yes.
Councillor Fellner,
sorry, I lost you there, Craig, for, I lost
your
internet.
vote?
I
What's
vote,
your vote, Councillor? Yeah, yes or no?
yes.
Councillor Finson,
Yes.
Councillor Moffett,
yay.
Councillor Osborne,
nay.
Mayor McDermott.
Yay. So that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the business, we have a resolution here, from the Township of Armor asking us to basically endorse what they have written. So I'll read it. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby support the attached resolution number 6, dated April 28, 2020, of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Armor, and the letter attached to the resolution from Councillor Rod Ward, dated April 15, 2020, requesting substantial investments in high-speed internet connectivity in rural areas, and that copies of this resolution be forwarded to the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Scott Aitchison, MP, Parry Sound, Muskoka, Norm Miller, MPP, Parry Sound, Muskoka, and the Corporation of the Township of Armor. Could I have a motion by Ward 3?
Mayor, I'm having difficulty finding the
Page
documentation.
269. Page 269, but can I have a motion from Ward 4?
Yes,
Can I have a seconder from Ward 5?
I second that.
Thank you.
Question,
Is
Mayor?
there any, sorry?
Question? On page
Yep.
269, it's the salutation from the deputy clerk of the Township of Armor. I want to know where our motion is.
Our motion is to endorse theirs,
Do we have a
prepared
written,
by the
motion?
clerk.
Do we have a written motion in our agenda?
They have a written motion in their
I
agenda.
can't find it.
No, all your motion does is support Armor's motion.
We're not doing anything except saying we support the Township of Armor, and just for your benefit, the Township of Armor is in East Perry Sound.
Yes, I know where that is. Could you explain their resolution and what it's all about? Because when I got this agenda, it's the first I've heard of this thing.
Page
Is there-
270 is their, and 271 is their exact wording of their letter to us and their resolution.
Okay, and this letter is to Doug Ford. And copy to MPP Miller,
Yep.
yes, MPP Miller. So it's basically a resolution asking Doug Ford for money for internet connectivity.
It's asking both the federal and provincial governments to increase the investment in rural internet.
Okay, and did you attend a meeting?
I did, and the
With,
summary is item 9C.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of supporting the Armor resolution? Can I see some hands? Can you see hands, Craig? Because I see.
You're all up.
Okay, all in favor. Thank you, carried. Georgian Bay Biosphere Gardening request is basically a donation request. I don't really know where people want to go with this. We don't have a lot of money left in our budget, and the township's not into gardening ourselves. It says it's to get gardens to 1,000 people in need so they can grow their own vegetables. Any individual can donate to this. They are asking for a council donation. Councillor Coles, do you have a comment?
Yes, I think this should fall under our regular donation policy, and therefore we should not donate this year. I'm a gardener and I support the principles, but I think we should postpone this to the following year, provided they submit a request in time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moffat?
I was trumped by Councillor Coles because that's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Art.
Okay, so I think in this case, there's no real next step for council, really, is there, Clerk? You're just going to tell them it was discussed and we're not making a donation and here's our policy for next year? Okay, thank you very much. So I did attend a meeting of the Regional Broadband Strategy. You can see the summary. It was a very unofficial meeting, but it came out of the heads of council meeting because we were warned that there was significant federal money coming very, very soon, and we better get ready. We have a follow-up meeting tomorrow. We have one of the pieces of my summary, when you can read it, it's pretty self-explanatory, is that West Perry Sound municipalities have an incredible depth of information because of the work of Chris Mahan and the Smart Community. And in order to put together a terms of reference to be eligible for the federal funding, basically the District of Muskoka and East Perry Sound are going to have to get that depth of information. It was agreed that the Smart Community and to a certain extent our GIS folks, both ours and Archipelago, would help Muskoka. And at tomorrow's meeting, we'll be discussing terms of reference and guiding principles. And I believe that if we get to what did you folks call it? A telecom protocol, that is something that this committee could work on and bring back to council. So we're really just trying to get ready because we've been told there's a significant amount of money coming, and that's why MP Scott Aitchison is also the chair of the Conservative Government Broadband Caucus. So we have somebody at the table from our region. Councillor Moffat.
I guess my main question is I've never heard of this Parry Sound Muskoka Community Network until I read this report. I'm obviously aware of the smart community, but where or who or what exactly is this Parry Sound Muskoka Community Network?
Well, they've been around.
Maybe others know what it is, but I don't.
It's been around for at least 5 or 6 years. It's an organization funded entirely by FedNor. I think his title is executive director. I don't have his business card here. Is Stuart Morley. Maureen, who you see on the summary, is his past chair, and Lance is his current chair. They are the ones that do the entrepreneurial awards with Parry Sound and Muskoka. They're well funded. Their mandate is economic health. So broadband is just part of it, whereas SMART is dedicated to broadband. So I think you can Google them. I can give you Stuart's coordinates when I go home. They're very well respected. They created the, I think it's called the Hundreds Club in both Muskoka and Parry Sound. I'd have to get the exact name, where people go to a meeting and donate $100, and that creates the prizes for the entrepreneurs in the region. Some of the past winners were Kim, can't tell your last name, that builds the houses where you put the ground floor on first, and another winner was the woman that created the indestructible pantyhose that sells for $95, but there's absolutely no way you can put a hole in them. So that's who they are. I don't know if I can look for a website for you, but
no.
they've been.
Do these parties work together? Have they worked together? Like, are we like? I'm not sure if we're putting cats and dogs into the same room here. And
a little bit. A little bit. We were Bert Liverance and I were charged with it as the two new mayors amongst the heads of council. If you can get the two of SMART and Parry Sound Muskoka grouped together to work together for a joint bid, go for it. And I think we made a lot of progress. And that's part of the reason why we brought in the federal MP, because we feel that the elected officials will have some clout at the table. And they are really cooperating.
Okay,
very pleased.
Thank you.
And I just put the summary in to update you, and I'll put any further summaries in. Okay, council reports. We don't have CAO Chris here. Councillor Osborne, sorry.
I wanted to give a little more information on MCN. They were a customer of mine. They've been a customer of mine for about 10 years, 15 years. I knew the previous manager before Stuart Morley, the consultant, and they were integral in funding the federal funds core broadband and a lot of infrastructure funding through their office in Bracebridge. And a lot of backbone funding went through there. I didn't know about the pantyhose.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Osborne. You received Chris Maday's summary of the COVID business last week before he left on vacation. I think it's pretty comprehensive, and as you can see, if you watch the premiere, things are changing daily. But I think we had a reasonably quiet weekend. People were anticipating all kinds of friction, but I've talked to Chief Hood, and we were all very surprised on Friday afternoon that the fire ban got lifted, but it did. So I'm going to call on Gail. Can you do Ward 6 Council report first, please?
I sure can. I don't have a lot to report. Lots of calls about the fire ban, and people were very pleased that the fire ban was lifted. It wasn't too busy around here, although I saw more people pickerel fishing on the river than I've ever seen, which is interesting, mostly children and their parents. Craig and I cleaned the gardens at the Wellness Center and at the liquor store for the Horticultural Society. We're preparing them for a tribute to Ray Weldon. Craig and some other people in town are preparing the community gardens. They're putting a fence around the community garden. There'll be a gazebo there, and Craig has built a picnic table to put inside of the gazebo so people can sit in the shade to get their plants ready. And there's work being done on who will have the space and how that will work. I've been asked by Scott Aitchison to join the Belvedere Heights board as a provincial representative. They're having representatives on all long-term. I know, I said, this is great. I get to work with Art. So they're having all long-term care. They're going to put somebody in to represent the province. Now, I've just been asked to do it, and so it hasn't been done yet, but somebody will contact me from Sudbury. Other than that, yeah, the porta potty looks different than I thought it would. I see it sitting there. It's not operational yet, but it's an interesting looking thing. I'm surprised. I thought it would be different. Anyway, that's all I have to report. Things seem to be quiet in town. Mostly people worried about fire and getting their boats in the water. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Many calls on the fire ban. The opening of the boat launches. Many calls. Landfill site issues because we are still on winter hours. I had a conference, DSAB conference board meeting on the 14th at 7 p.m. that I was on, and it was just normal business. And that's it. I'm glad we're almost back to normal.
We got a long way to go yet, I think, but
No, I mean on the lakes with the boat launches open and people that get their docks in the water and their boats in the water that actually live on the lake and are residents of the lake. Thank you.
Councillor Fellner.
Had a committee of adjustment meeting last week. Stone spoke to earlier. 3 applications. Went well. It was our first Zoom meeting. Don't anticipate any problems down the road based on what we saw. I did send a little letter out to the museum committee informing them of our decision last meeting to go ahead and replace the roof at the museum. I didn't really get very many calls about either the boat launches or fire. I got no calls on fire. So, and in my neighborhood, it was a pretty quiet weekend, really. So, that's about all I've got to report.
Councillor Osborne.
There. Likewise, I had no calls about fire rules or about the boat launches. The public picked up on it pretty quick to the province. I had 2 meetings last week, one with the Rosslow Nursing Station Advisory Board and a second one with all of the nursing stations from the whole district. 35 people on that Zoom meeting, and it went well. Sad to report, there is a healthcare worker from West Perry Sound Hospital who has tested positive, and a 50-year-old died. A 50-year-old woman died in Perry Sound of COVID. So it's not over, and we've got now a 7 to 14 day incubation period after the long weekend to see what the results of that will be. Other than that, nothing to report.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Yes, I have had a few calls on the fire ban, and quite a few on the boat launches, people trying to get to the particular island cottages and weren't able to get there. But I think one of them called Anne, our mayor, in frustration, but we both gave them the same answer. I'm delighted to have Gail on the board at Belvedere. We have 2 vacancies, provincial appointment vacancies right now, one from last fall and another one's leaving in July. So that leaves 2 openings. So thank you and welcome. That's good news. Other than that, no meetings with Belvedere until next week. And we have a meeting. Are you coming next week, Gail, by the way? Next?
I don't know yet. I'm not official, but I will be if I'm official by then.
Okay, and then the Chamber of Commerce is meeting again on Monday, next Monday. So I think that's it.
Councillor Moffat?
Similar, several calls on a number of issues, either historic or with regards to today's agenda. Attended a couple of meetings, mainly in the museum on Tower Hill, getting things done for the year end, as well as board meetings, as well as a park to park board meeting. So, and more to come. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Some of these we've touched on in my report. The broadband meeting was May 5th. On May 6th, I participated in the Cottage Country Mayor's call with the Premier. We had 80 people on that call and it actually worked pretty well. It was interesting how divergent the opinions were by region. Marinas and boat launches were top of mind for people like us and Halliburton, Highlands, those areas. But down around the St. Lawrence, those cottage people, they've got border control issues with Americans canoeing across the river and the border. So it's very different depending on where you are. May 8th, I participated in the Skelton Broomwell call with the OP moving. Also on May 8th, I participated really as an observer in the conference call with Camp George, the CNIB camp, and the Camp for the Deaf. And they then had pulled their summer activity, and you can see that the Premier today has banned all overnight camps for the summer. It's disappointing for kids, it's disappointing for counselors, and a financial hit for many camps, but that's the decision the province has made. May 13th, I participated in the Parry Sound Health Center Board and the COVID update. They are managing well, the tests are going up. Councillor Osborne reported on the healthcare worker that tested positive. I can say that there is no positive testing as of yesterday in either Belvedere or any of our long-term care homes in the region, in Parry Sound area. There is one in North Bay. And on May 13th as well, the mayors and the alternates met to start moving the Wellness Center community consultation forward. We are continuing to go forward with the proposal that was put to the government for funding. It's a 49,000 square foot plan as submitted. We're still hopeful for the funding. The consultants that put the funding application forward are very confident. And we have been told that infrastructure like recreation centers will be some of the first things to be funded. So we're very hopeful. The minutes of the full meeting should be in the next agenda package. Are there any questions for any councillors?
Mayor, when is the next meeting with regards to the Wellness Center? I missed that. I saw it after the 13th, and I'm just wondering if there's a schedule or something, and maybe I'm missing
I'm
where
just looking at my notes.
Because
I don't think we have one.
yeah, when I looked on the Parry Sound website for the link, there didn't seem to be anything about a schedule. So I was just looking to see if we can get something maybe relevant so that we can, at least we know when the meetings are, since they are virtual.
The next big call is going to come from Tom Lundy, who's chairing the Creative Committee on Public Consultation, and that will be everywhere. So they have to put together a plan. We even talked about distributing questionnaires and that kind of thing through the transfer stations for people that don't have internet. So they're putting that together for how to do public consultation, and that'll be the next thing. where public input will be, you know, we had all the meetings scheduled and then they all got canceled by COVID, so they're struggling. But I'll make sure everybody gets that. My notes have a date.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee agendas and minutes and correspondence as presented on the agenda and the addendum for the May 19th meeting of council. Can I have a motion from Ward 4?
Yeah, moved.
Seconded by Ward 5.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. And now I have a motion that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 7:53 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. The first is the Municipal Integrity Commissioner renewal. The second is human resource matters, as brought forward by Terry, and the labor relations and employee negotiations by me. Can I have a motion from you, Gail? Councillor Brooks?
I so move, yeah.
And seconded by Ward 1?
I second it.
All in favor of moving into closed? Okay, and I will now ask acting CAO